Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most underrated villains in FNAF fan game history. While everyone remembers the biggest names, these characters often get overlooked despite having incredible designs, memorable personalities, and terrifying encounters. Some of these deserve to be just as iconic as the legends of the community, so let's get into it. I have been very critical of Steel Wool ever since the release of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. For those of you somehow unaware, Steel Wool is the company behind Security Breach and both of the FNAF VR games. Something interesting about that is that the VR games are very good and Security Breach is a dumpster fire. Why? Well, Steel Wool is a company that specializes in VR, and if you've never been on the internet before, Security Breach is not a VR game, which probably plays a part into why it's so utterly terrible. So, with Steel Wool announcing their new non-FNAF VR game, Secret of the Mimic, I had my standards so low to the ground it was in the Earth's core. I've recently played through the entire game on stream on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Upon completion, my conclusion was that the game was actually pretty good, and I ended up giving the game a 7 out of 10. Now pause! I beat the whole game in one 7-hour sitting, and if you were to have asked me 7 hours earlier if I would have given this game a 7 out of 10, I would have definitely said no. So, how did we get here? Why did I rate it this way? And the most important question of all, did Steel Wool learn from their mistakes in Security Breach? Let's begin with the opening of the game. We're in a Fazbear Entertainment van driving to a rundown factory that was previously owned by Edwin Murray, his costume factory, Murray's Costume Manor. We're told by the Fazbear Entertainment dispatcher over the phone that we have to go inside and retrieve a few things from one of our contractors, Edwin Murray. Upon entering the building, we're greeted to an opening show that's a little bit broken, probably because of how old and run down this building is. It is here where we learn two incredibly essential game mechanics. One, cranking a lever. This may seem stupid, but I promise you will be cranking levers in this game more than any other task, so really get used to it. And maybe learn that you need to crank the lever clockwise, not counterclockwise. I'll get to that a little bit later. The other major mechanic taught here is our door key. Think of this not really as a key, but more of a key card. On it, you'll see a display of 6 symbols. Each symbol acts as a different entry-level pass, and of course, at the beginning of the game, we only have the first. Next to many doors, there will be a keyhole with a glowing symbol that indicates which level of entry is required to open the door. Very simple mechanic. I'm sure I actually didn't even need to explain all that, but let's move on. Continuing into the next room, we get a great glance at one of my favorite parts of this game, the level of fear it initially invokes. There are several empty costumes throughout this giant building, and I mean several, like a shit ton, a fuckload. Not only are just seeing them around cool, but since the Mimic can enter any suit, and for a large majority of the game, the Mimic is the only actual threat to you, at any moment, any of the costumes you see could get up and begin to move. When I first heard of this mechanic before the game was released, I was actually really turned off to the idea, just from knowing how Steel Wool handled wandering animatronics in Security Breach. For those who don't know, in Security Breach, there are also several wandering animatronics that exist solely to piss me off. A lot of that game has you sneakily maneuvering around these characters as to not be seen. However, in Security Breach, Steel Wool had not figured out how to make good character AI whatsoever. The characters in Security Breach think much more like an AI than an actual real-life threat, which I guess technically makes sense, but it isn't actually fun as a gameplay experience. If getting chased by a character, you turn a corner and hide, the animatronic will more than likely be able to guess where you are and kill you. This is not fun. Imagine you're being chased by someone or something in real life. If you turn a corner and hide without them seeing where, the chances of them knowing where you are immediately are pretty much zero. This is why chases in Security Breach aren't fun. Another reason Security Breach characters fucking suck? Animatronic spawning habits. I stated that the characters wander around. However, I neglected to mention that they will always wander somewhere near the player. For example, if the animatronic is in one room, and you move to a room that is a very far distance away from the room the animatronic is in, it obviously wouldn't be very fun from a gameplay standpoint to still have the animatronic wander in that first room. So, how do you fix this issue? Either A, have the animatronic begin walking towards the room the player entered and then continue to aimlessly wander from there. Or B, teleport the animatronic into the new room away from the player and then continue to wander. Security Breach decided that option C was even better. Why teleport the animatronic into the room and away from the player when we could instead spawn the animatronic directly fucking behind them? No, I'm not joking. In my stream of Security Breach, I actually stopped playing because of these two enormous gameplay problems. You can't have a character that will know your location the moment they see you, and then also continuously spawn those characters directly behind the player to get them seen. This does not lead to a fun gameplay experience, it leads to an incredibly frustrating one. So, how does Secret of the Mimic use wandering animatronics? Well, this is actually a spot where Steel Wool learned a lot, and there is actually a very large improvement. So, the Mimic gets into a costume and begins to wander. Let's say it sees you and a chase ensues. If you were to turn a corner and leave its line of sight, instead of knowing exactly where you are like in Security Breach, it will instead mark the last point it saw you and move there. Then it will wait to see if it can see you again, and if it can't, it will continue to walk in the direction you went in. Meaning that if you turn a corner and hid in a locker, it would not know you went into the locker and would walk past it. This is how you do a wandering threat mechanic. This creates fun strategic gameplay, not frustrating poopy ass gameplay. Anyways, we try to enter another room but see that the key symbol doesn't allow access as it's one level too high, so we continue. We find a mailbox machine, which I will say doesn't really make sense from almost any standpoint. You can insert your key into the mailbox machine to then add whatever mail was inside into your key box. And at several computers we find later, we can then read those letters. I have no idea how this makes any lick of sense in the game world, and there are several questions I could ask to break the logic of this mechanic, but I don't want this video to be an hour long, so let's just forget about this. Continuing in the other direction, we walk into this game's central hub area, where the very important security office room is located. Here we learn another frequent mechanic, jerking off generators. That's all I have to say about it. I could explain the mechanic a little bit more in detail, but I mean, just look at it. We're jerking it off. We can see the level to access the security office is one level above ours, but after jerking off the generator, it busts and the door opens and we can enter, hearing the dispatcher over the intercom inside. The dispatcher tells us that the Mimic is currently active inside the building and that it does have some homicidal tendencies. I could have figured that without him telling me, but that's cool, I suppose. It's also in this room where we find three very important and frequent machines we'll be seeing around the building: the computer, the upgrade station, and the inventory. The computer is pretty simple. With it, we can check the map of the building, read the mail we collect, and run a minigame called Moon EXE and something called Parachute.exe that requires the maximum access level to run. The upgrade station is pretty simple. It upgrades our key to the next access level. And finally, the inventory, which is a little silly. Around the map, you will be able to find several objects, most of which being collectibles, but some being important objects like cranks. You can put these objects into the inventory and then access them at any other inventory machine we find later. This bitch is literally just an ender chest. Holy shit, we've done a lot of yapping, but I had to do so in order to explain the central mechanics of this game. Now we can actually start talking about what happens. Let's take a little note. This game is very large and very long, just like my meat whistle, and it would take literally hours to talk about everything as in detail as I've been talking about it so far. So, for the sake of the sanity of you, me, and my editor, I will very simply be going over what happens for the majority of the game, only pausing to go into detail for things I think really matter, or for things that stuck out to me. I'm not going to be deep diving into every puzzle we have to solve, nor will I be mind-numbingly explaining every little bit of fucking backtracking we do. Trust me, you'll still be able to follow along with what's happening if you have a brain in your skull though. So, let's continue. Using our upgraded key, we head back to that locked room from earlier and enter inside, solve a puzzle that turns the power to the building on and allows for the dispatcher to talk to us over the building's overhead intercoms. It's also here where we get our first glance at the Mimic inside of the stupid fucking elephant costume we saw at the beginning of the game, stalking us from outside of the room. Alright, here we go guys. Back in the security office, we're told that we need to find the schematics for the Mimic, which are likely in the executive office. Of course, we need the highest access level to be able to go there, and of course, all of the other upgrade stations are in random areas around the building. Have you sensed how this game is going to work? Go to this section of the building, solving puzzles and avoiding a big boss, threat, or event, upgrade your pass, come back to the hub area, and repeat until you can get to the executive area. This is not a loop that bothers me. I love linearity like this, but I also know that some people don't, so this may be a turnoff for you. We grab a crank from the inventory and make our way towards the warehouse where the next upgrade station is. We use the crank to open this gate. Oh fuck, god damn! Alright, shit, the first scripted chase in this game. This one is pretty easy to get away from, however. Just hide in a locker and walk around it. All good. This is how most chases in this game will be, except the future ones will be random. During this chase, however, is probably when I should mention noise distractions. It's another way to manipulate the Mimic's AI. Given that the Mimic doesn't have a line of sight on you, if you cause a distraction, for example, grabbing a wind-up mouse and making noise, it will pursue the sound before continuing to look for you. This makes for a more strategic way of getting around the threats. Even though I literally only used this once throughout my whole playthrough, and it wasn't until near the end of the game, I would recommend you do this though and not play the way I do. Heading into the next area, we see we need a crank to open up a gate. Wandering into another room, we actually find the next upgrade station. That was oddly easy. However, we still need that crank. Speaking of crank, I yank my crank on the daily. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that. Let's move on. We walk through a giant hole in the wall into what seems to be a place where kids can play, or something like that. We find a giant present with a crank on it. Great, let's steal this bitch. Now, this is the first section of the game where I encountered two problems. First, for the love of God, turn the cranks clockwise. I turned this crank counterclockwise, and while it will still work if you choose to do this, you will have to crank it for about 19 times as long, so just how about we turn it the right way? After cranking enough, we see Jackie, a giant puppet, jump out of the box. Some might say she's a baddie. I for one know how to keep it in my pants, however. Also in doing this, the crank broke off and we can use it to open that pesky gate. But pause, let's talk about how I soft-locked myself here and broke the game. When I first saw that we needed a crank to open the gate, I had not yet found the Jack-in-the-Box room. So what I did was go to the inventory and pull out the last crank that was inside, as I was just taught to do so in the section previously. After doing so, I let Jackie out of the box and retrieved the second crank, which fell on the floor. I decided I liked the new crank better because the handle was red. What can I say? I'm a simple man. I took this crank to the door and realized I couldn't put it into the handle. I thought I'd try the other one that I pulled out of the inventory. So I dropped this new one on the ground, grabbed the other, and noticed I couldn't insert this one either. I then thought that maybe I broke the game and just needed to put the one I took out of the inventory back in. So I did so and went back to try to put the new crank into the handle. However, remember how I said I dropped it on the ground? Well, I happened to drop it directly into the hitboxes of some bricks, which prevented me from ever being able to pick it back up. So, I can't pick up the correct crank, and the other crank I have access to won't go into the handle. So I'm soft-locked, and I had to reset. I didn't lose much progress, but I just find it odd that with a whole team of game testers, nobody ever thought to try this. I feel like what I did wasn't even that far-fetched. But hey, maybe it was. I don't know. Just thought I'd mention that I did this. Going past this gate, we enter a room with a mailbot inside. We find a generator and our instincts kick in, so we start jerking it off. After getting it active, the gooning material Jackie enters the room. I guess the Mimic thought now was a great time to climb inside of her, which I'm assuming makes a few of you fucking freaks pretty jealous. She rudely attacks the minimum wage working mailbot and throws him into a fucking wall. Can all my wagies relate to this? Anyways, it's at this point that Jackie then sets her sights on us and the chase ensues. This chase is by far my favorite in the entire game. Something we'll notice as we continue playing this game is that it begins to lose steam as it goes on. But to be fair, that is to be expected with most games that exist. This chase has us running through the warehouse, but Jackie is fucking awesome, and throughout this chase she will be trying to hug us. Again guys, keep it in your pants, it's a robot. But as you're running through the tight corridors, you'll actually see her arms reach out from behind you, which is honestly one of the coolest things I've ever seen come out of a chase before. I just can't get enough of how cool, scary, and intense this chase really was. On top of that, this chase is actually pretty damn long too, which I also think is awesome. There's a criticism I have with Poppy Playtime Chapter 4, that being, they go through the characters in that game so quickly that none of them really leave an impact. Trust me, each major antagonist like Jackie in Secret of the Mimic leaves an impact, and the length of the battle is definitely one of those reasons. Something cool about this long chase though is that there's always something different happening. Very rarely is it just run down a long hall like it's a chase straight out of Garden of Banban. There's always levers to pull and doors to open that make these chases even more intense. We slam Jackie in a gate and jerk off another generator. Believing we're safe, we continue, but guess what, fucker? Jackie is right in front of us and we're stuck in a vent. What are we to do? Well, Jackie weighs as much as a Discord moderator, thankfully, and the vent crashes. We wake up in the security office where we learn that the vent was actually right above it and we crashed through the ceiling. Yet for whatever reason, Jackie didn't kill us. We're told by the dispatcher that the next upgrade station is in the showroom back through the first room we entered. Entering the next room right before the showroom, we see a fuck ton of empty costumes. And it's here where I need to bring up what I feel is the biggest issue this game has: how and when the Mimic chooses to enter costumes. Upon coming into this room, it is incredibly likely that the Mimic will enter one of the costumes. Cool, let's start distracting it and sneaking around. As you play this game, you will become very good at learning how to do this, but now brings up the big problem that kind of seems to have come over from Security Breach: the teleporting mechanic. I will say that in this game it's far less egregious, but it's still worth talking about. The Mimic will switch costumes sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. However, when it switches, it tends to choose a costume to switch to randomly, even if that new costume is on the other side of the room. This very obviously leads to some pretty annoying issues. The main one being, hey look, you distracted the Mimic and moved to the other side of the room. It's now safe to walk around because there's no way the Mimic will see you. Uh-oh, fucker. You thought you were safe after you played the game by its rules and avoided the threat? Well, guess what? The Mimic has now entered a costume that's directly in front of you. This is obviously a big problem. On multiple occasions throughout my playthrough, I'd walk directly into a costume that the Mimic was in because I knew that previously it wasn't close to me. Even though I was keeping tabs on where the threat was, I was still punished. I feel like this took away from the immersion and fear factor and instead left me feeling pretty annoyed and frustrated. But continuing, we enter a room and find my favorite character in this entire game: a tiny little cleaning robot who's just sweeping the floor. There are several of these throughout the game, they're adorable and I love them dearly, and I chose to name all of them Rufus. So I will be calling them this throughout the rest of the video. Want to hear the best part about Rufus? You can literally pet him! Give him some head pats! I fucking love this game! Hi! Oh my god! Oh my god! I fucking love this thing, bro! Pat! Oh my goodness, go Pat! Oh, one more! Oh my god! As I was streaming this, someone actually drew fan art of me and Rufus, which I think is just awesome. Also, while looking for this fan art for the editor to throw on screen, I also found a sketch of some more Skags and Rufus fan art. So here's that art too. We find an elevator that's fucked as shit by a costume head. We have to use a machine that teaches us how to fix it instead of just grabbing the head out of the gears ourselves like a normal person. I don't really know why safety is a big concern now, given the fact we willingly went into a building with an actual murder robot. We have to retrieve the maintenance cassette to learn how to properly fix the elevator, which is conveniently located in a room approximately 95 football fields in length away. Which means we have to walk back through the room of bullshit, dick-ass, fuck-ass costumes. After grabbing the cassette, we head back to the elevator and learn the process of fixing it. Keep this in mind because it will become incredibly important later. We fix the elevator and can continue moving on. Going up the elevator, we find Rufus number 2, give him a pat, and enter the showroom where we meet the next big bad. Fucking Music Man. By the way, I know his name is Big Top in this game, but I'm choosing to call him Music Man instead, so eat my ass. While I think this section is very fun, here is where I also found another way to softlock myself. However, before I talk about how, let's go over what it is we're supposed to do. The goal in this section is to spin the prize wheel, but you have to complete minigames and beat the scores in order to win prize wheel spins. Music Man will be watching you the whole time. You'll see multiple mannequins around the area for some reason, and if you walk into any of them, they will make a lot of noise.
I want to pay money to play these games.
Keep that in mind. The first game I chose to play had us shooting targets with a toy gun. However, I found it way more fun to shoot the stupid fucking Helpy Bear in the face. After completing this minigame, the power to the large room goes off, and Music Man goes into attack mode. Thankfully, he is bolted to the ground and can't actively move around, but he will spin in a circle trying to look for you. If you make too much noise, either by walking, running, or bumping into one of the mannequins, then he will immediately turn towards you and butt-fuck your pussy and or bussy. After the lights went out, several more mannequins spawned, acting more like a maze now. You'll have to quickly move around them because, again, Music Man is rotating in a circle and will kill you if he sees you, so you have to move fast. Once you get back to the entrance, you will have to complete an energy puzzle. But you want to know something cool? It's timed! Yay! As you're trying to complete it, Music Man will slowly pull himself towards you. If you're too slow, he's gonna have a bussy buffet. After you turn the power back on, I guess he decides he doesn't want to kill you anymore and goes back to behaving. Now we're free to do the wheel spin. Fun fact, it's rigged as shit, and you'll always get nothing on every spin except the last one. But after getting your spins done, we have to go play another minigame. The next one I chose to do was one of those classic games where we have to throw a ball at some big goofy ass teeth. However, once again, I found it much more amusing to throw the balls at Helpy instead. Let's speed this up. You have to play a minigame, sneak around the Music Man, and quickly solve the energy puzzle 3 times in a row to complete this section. On the final wheel spin, we win the grand prize and can continue. But let me explain how I soft-locked myself first. Somehow, this is even dumber than the last time. So, there are 3 minigames to do in this section. The first shooting minigame, the ball throwing game, and the second space shooting minigame, which plays the same as the first, but it's in space. What you're supposed to do is play each minigame once. However, there's nothing preventing you from playing any of the games more than once. So what I did was do the first shooting minigame, then the ball minigame, and then in the third cycle decided to do the first shooting minigame again, because like I said, the game allowed me to. When you enter one of those minigame areas and start the minigame, a door closes behind you to prevent you from fucking something up. However, since the game didn't expect me to do the same game twice, after I beat the score and the power went off, signaling me to go do the power puzzle, the doors behind me never opened back up, and I was stuck in the minigame room, soft-locked. Again, I have no idea how in testing nobody ever caught this. This seems like such a simple mistake for a player to make, even more simple than the last problem I had. If any of the devs are watching this video, please, fix this, please. Thank you. Anyways, after winning the grand prize, we can head up the stairs and hear a large crash. What the fuck? We look down where we were before and see that Music Man has broken himself off the floor and is nowhere to be found. Well, looks like we're fucked. We solve a puzzle to upgrade our key and continue moving forward. We head out onto the roof of the building and the game autosaves. Uh-oh. Here comes a boss fight. As we explore, we see Music Man climb the fucking building like King Kong and the chase begins. Now, you remember how I said I really liked Jackie's chase? I cannot say the same for Music Man's. His chase isn't inherently bad, I just personally am not a fan. I will say that it does start pretty sick. We begin by running down some spiral-like stairs with him crawling down the center, which looks fucking awesome. But then, we get to the fuck-ass office building chase, which I hate. You will have to run through different office rooms, and Music Man's arms will break through the ceiling, preventing you from going into some rooms. So you'll really have to be on your toes. But here's the reason I dislike this chase so much. Usually in cases that have this think on your toes mechanic, you have to learn which path you need to take. And for me specifically, who doesn't handle chases very well in any game, it takes me a few attempts to learn the chase. Well, each time you do this chase, the path you need to take becomes randomized. So I never had the chance to learn the pattern. I just had to throw myself at it over and over again until I got lucky. Is this in part a skill issue? 100% it is, but I am giving my review and I personally am not a huge fan of this section of the chase. After the office section, we move to what I'll call the crawling section. The chase gets much better from here. As we crawl through a tight corridor, Music Man's arms will slam through the ceiling and we just have to avoid them. Super easy. Then we get to the mannequin section, and the chase begins to get bad again. Not nearly as bad as the office section though. I like how this part of the chase uses a mechanic we saw from Music Man earlier, however, I still want to die. There's one corridor where Music Man will slam his arm through the ceiling and leave a mannequin behind, and if you slow down for even a fraction of a second, you will die. And I did die, and then I shit myself. Once we get past that, we find another staircase. Music Man crawls down, but just like Jackie, is fat as shit and breaks the stairs. We fall together, and when the smoke clears, we see that Music Man got burned the fuck up. Oh shit, bitch got burned to smithereens. Eat a dick, Paul Blart! Okay, we're good. Not even a problem. We head back to the security office and are told by the dispatcher that the next upgrade station is in the theater. Once we arrive there, we learn in order to enter the theater, we need to be wearing a costume, specifically what appears to be a springlock costume, which leads me to believe that it was Edwin who designed the springlock mechanics and not William. Lore! Anyways, it's not just as easy as hopping into the suit and going in. We first have to find all the limbs and the head, which are scattered around the area. Oh, also, in this room, we see Rufus number 3. Pet. Getting the pieces is not hard. Avoiding the mimic who teleports into a fuck ton of costumes kind of is. Collecting all the pieces probably took me 40 minutes, but if you're actually talented, you could probably do it in 10. Just know, it's not hard. But if you want to see me do it, you can see it in the VOD on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Hopping into the suit, we move on. While in this suit, the mimic will not be able to tell it's us, so we're completely safe. However, while in the suit, we won't be able to perform important tasks, so we'll have to hop out of the suit to do so, leaving us vulnerable. Our suit is also equipped with a gun, which is honestly just giving me way too much power. Anyways, we have to solve a power puzzle and move on to the next room where we need to ditch our suit for the time being. It's also here where we learn the point of this section of the building, to act as a place that will write stories and create shows for people. Who really gives a fuck about that though? Why give a shit when I can see a ghost-ass white tiger costume giggling like a schoolgirl? Yes, I'm serious. What the fuck is that? Moving on, we solve a quick puzzle that wasn't quick for me at all because I'm bad, and that allows us to continue moving our suit and move on to the special event of this section, the show. The show itself is boring as dick. Throughout, we have to use the gun on our suit to shoot some targets to progress the story, and occasionally shoot little puppets that try to attack us. But here we learn something super interesting. This game takes place in the 50s, so long before the first Freddy's location. Yet somehow, both Foxy and Roxy are in this show, which leads me to believe that Edwin designed those two characters as well. Lore! More lore! After completing the show, the ledge we're standing on breaks and we get fucked up. We wake up in a hospital area with a thick-ass nurse taking care of us. She believes that we're a robot because, no shit, we're sitting in a suit. She notices that there's a foreign object inside of us, and I tell her I have a foreign object that could be inside of her too. If you couldn't guess, Nurse Sweet Cheeks will be the boss of this section. While we move around, we see that she's stuck on a track, so great. Her movement is limited. Oh god damn it, she broke off the fucking track and is now free roaming. Fuck! Since the area we're in now in the building is a recycling center, in order to continue, we need to do some recycling. And of course, Nurse Boner Alert is roaming the whole time. This section isn't too hard, and I actually kind of liked it, even despite the fact it may seem like otherwise in the VOD on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Thankfully for us, I didn't softlock myself in this area this time. It's also in this area where we find the next upgrade station, and we're actually almost completely upgraded. After recycling all of the trash, the chase begins. This one is a bit different. It takes place on a conveyor belt that she's walking against. We have to shoot garbage out of some vents to fuck her ass up and push her into some lava. Wow, that was, actually surprisingly easy. I was concerned I was going to be stuck on this chase for an hour like I was with Music Man. Moving on with our brand spanking new upgrade, we begin to head back to the security office and oh, for fuck's sake, the lava didn't kill her! Of course the chase isn't over, you moron, that was way too fast. Before I talk about this chase, I want to mention how fucking awesome the music for it is. It's my favorite song in the whole soundtrack, and I'll make sure it's the background music for this section. You hear that, editor? It better be the fucking chase music in the background right now, or I'm gonna make the next video you edit be 3 hours long. Got it? Alright, good boy. The chase continues through the recycling center, with some fun sneaking sections mixed in too. But what I really want to talk about is the elevator section. What I assumed was the end of the chase is when we entered the elevator and escape. The elevator breaks and we have to listen to Fiona, who we later find out is Edwin's wife, teach us how to fix it again. Remember how I said to remember the fixing section from earlier? This is why. After fixing the elevator, Nurse Hotbottom drops her fat ass cheeks on top of the elevator. And now we have to fix it again. But this time, we're against the clock for her pegging me. Yay! I'm so fucking excited to fix this elevator for the next half an hour! Yes, it actually took me that long! I'm so fucking terrible at playing games! In all reality, this section isn't hard. I'm actually just terrible. After we get the elevator fixed, it starts rising quickly. Knowing it's about to get squished in the ceiling, we get to watch the Mimic jump out of the 4th hottest animatronic in the whole franchise right before it gets fucked up. And this chase comes to a close. I think this chase so far is the weakest in the game, but I do think the reveal of what the Mimic actually looks like is pretty cool and adds some points to it though. We get back to the security office and the dispatcher tells us the next place we have to go is the admin wing, which is through the warehouse. Amazing. What's in the warehouse to blow my guts up like Nagasaki? Well, it's a fat, ugly, Chica looking ass bitch. Actually, I liked this section. It was simple, yet straightforward. The goal is to find 3 pieces to a power puzzle, then solve it and vacate the area. The pieces are scattered throughout the warehouse and the Chica ripoff is skating around trying to find you. Very simple, very fun, not much else to say about it. We head through the gate and move on to the next area, which contained a puzzle that gave me a terrible headache. I should note that throughout my playthrough, I decided that every time I died, I'd take a shot. And I died a lot. So having to think hard on a puzzle this deep into the game in my state took a lot out of me. But after a bunch of trial and error, we made it work and could continue. Huh. Oh wait, I forgot to mention that after you do this puzzle once and get to the other side of the room, then you have to do it again. I want to kill myself. Moving on to the next room, we see Carl the Cupcake? What the fuck? Did Edwin design that too? Well, whatever. When you get close to a Carl, they will make a fuck ton of noise. I'm betting you can guess where this is going. The next area has apparently not Ripoff Chica return, in a tight, cramped office area with a metric ass load of Carls around to ruin your day. I also want to mention that while playing this section, I got asked by someone in chat, quote, "If a femboy hit on you, would you fold?" This is not at all important to the gameplay one bit, just thought I'd mention how weird you freaks are. Moving to the next room, we find Rufus number 4. Pet pet. We also find the next upgrade station, and I figured out that this section is the lore dump area of the game. Yay, my favorite, lore dumping! Anyways, it's at this point we enter the room we've been trying to get to this whole time and download the Mimic blueprints. A very small chase with Chica begins. You just crawl into a vent. Awesome. This is kind of where I feel the game really starts to lose steam and turn more into a lore festival than a game. Moving on to the next area, we find Rufus number 5. Pet pet. You might be wondering what the boss of this section is. No way it was Chica, right? You're correct. It most certainly was not Chica. We head underground into the darkest room of all time and learn that the major fight of this section is against the stupid white tiger ghost costume we saw earlier. The tiger teleports around and can't go into the light. Lights around the dark room turn off and on, so you have to dash from one section to the other. At the end of the mad dash, there's a glowing star, which is probably important to the lore in some way. You take that star through a fucked up maze, all while the tiger will randomly teleport in front of you, jump scaring you and making you restart. I'm not really the biggest fan of this section, I can't lie, so I'm gonna try to get through it as quickly as I can. After getting through the maze, you set the star back down and do another mad dash section. Do this mad dash to maze section 3 times and we're done. Thank God. After this, we head to an elevator and all the way back up to the security office. The dispatcher tells us our work here is done and we should put our key into the inventory and leave. Does this at all sound a bit suspicious to you? Well, who really cares? We're done. We put the key back in the inventory and walk out of the building. On the drive home, the dispatcher calls us and asks why he hasn't been able to get a hold of us for the last few hours. Confused, our character, whose name is fucking Arnold, by the way, horrible name. Anyway, sorry. Confused, Arnold tells the dispatcher that he's been talking to him the whole time, and that he just told him to put his key away. The dispatcher is confident that he never told Arnold to do this, and it's here where we learn that the Mimic had been mimicking the voice of the dispatcher throughout the intercoms throughout the entire game. The Mimic tricked us into giving it the blueprints so that it could destroy them. Looking behind us, we see the Mimic in the back of the van, and it attacks, and the game comes to a close, giving us the bad ending. As the credits play out, we see ourselves in the POV of Freddy, with Chica and Bonnie at our sides, with the Mimic watching us perform. Hold the fuck up. Pause. What the fuck just happened? Well, as I said, what we just did was the bad ending. There's a few more endings to cover. I will note that I only got 2 endings, the bad ending and the extended bad ending. What the fuck does extended bad ending mean? Well, let's go over that one now. Going back to being able to put the key in the inventory, if we instead take it and travel deeper into the building, the mimic shows its true colors and tells us that we're going to die. We travel to some vents and head back up to the first room we entered and travel down through the floor deeper into the facility. It's at this moment when we're attacked by fucking Music Man again. What the fuck? I thought he was dead. As we travel down this large elevator, he will slowly begin crawling after us. Every once in a while, the elevator will stop and we'll have to quickly pull some levers to get it to continue moving. This random fight was so unexpected, I actually think it's pretty cool that he came back out of nowhere. I was honestly pleasantly surprised considering how much I hated his original fight. After escaping, we enter a new room, seeing a massive Freddy head. The original Freddy. Remember, it's the 50s, years before the first Freddy's location, yet here he is. Why? Well, it's at this section we learn that Edwin was actually originally in charge of the Freddy Fazbear Project, which is one of the craziest twists of all fucking time. But I'm gonna be real, it also makes the entirety of the lore all the more confusing. Oh yeah, also, Rufus number 6. Het pet. Moving on, we enter the room where we ended at in the bad ending, seeing Bonnie and Chica half-built performing on stage. But wait, they were way more built than this at the end of the bad ending. Does that mean that the mimic finished building them during that ending? Keep that thought in the back of your head. Going to a computer, we activate the stage lights to watch the show, and the mimic crawls out of the pile of endoskeletons. Not in a costume, just a jumbled mess of fuck. This section confused me a little bit, but it's actually pretty cool. We have to get to the office in the back room, but the mimic will close the doors when we get near them. This is literally just Five Nights at Freddy's 1, but in reverse, where the mimic is trying to keep us out of the office. It's actually so fucking cool. Around the room there are 2 Springlock costumes, one of Bub, a boss from FNAF World, which is weird, and another of Monty from Security Breach. Holy fucking shit, how many things did Edwin create? This is insane! What you have to do is get in the Springlock costumes and leave them next to the doors. This will make the mimic close the doors and waste power. However, you'll notice when you bring the first Springlock to the door, the fake dispatcher says, "It cannot see you in the suit, but I can." That's right, the fake dispatcher actually isn't the mimic. So, who could it be? After leaving both suits at the doors, 2 more doors open, revealing that there are an additional 2 doors we need to block with 2 more Springlock suits. Awesome! As we walk to the next set of doors, the fake dispatcher voice starts to change into a more female-sounding voice.
Power. It will trap us both down here in the dark.
Isn't that interesting? The remaining 2 Springlock suits are Lefty. What? Nah, just kidding. I'm pretty sure this is just Fredbear. And the other appears to be Spring Bonnie. Are we serious? Did Edwin literally just create everything by himself? Did William just steal every idea from him? This is so fucking weird. It's completely flipping everything we know about the lore on its head. After blocking the remaining 2 doors, the fake dispatcher opens them, revealing that it's been Fiona, Edwin's wife, that's been talking to us the entire time. As a machine? I'm so sorry. I really have no fucking idea what's going on. I know I'm really bad at explaining lore, but I'm trying my best. It seems like Fiona has turned into a goddamn robot. I'm assuming at some point she died to something and Edwin was like, "Fuck that, I want a robot wife now," and somehow put her soul into this machine in the building or some shit. I don't really know, guys. I'm sorry. Fiona tells us we have to head to their house, which is apparently in the fucking building underground for some reason. Literally, what the fuck is going on? Fiona tells us that Edwin abandoned her and their son David by doing nothing but working non-stop. Originally, the mimic was supposed to entertain David while Edwin was working, but at some point it gained homicidal tendencies for some reason. Please, correct me on anything I'm wrong about in the comments, guys. I'm pretty sure most theories I'm going to attempt to form in this video will be incorrect as fuck. We travel into the house section and have to collect a bunch of film reels scattered around while avoiding the mimic. At the end of each film reel is a number, and matching the color of the reel to the colors of the letters in the name David, visible on a picture on the projector, we'll be able to figure out the code to open a door that's located upstairs. Just don't question it, guys. Just go with it at this point. The FNAF lore hasn't made any sense since Ultimate Custom Night anyways. In these tapes, we see Edwin's neglect for his wife and son, and in one tape, see that the fucking mimic is Fiona? What the fuck is happening right now? So, I guess at some point, Fiona fucking died, so Edwin had the mimic start mimicking her to be a mother figure to David? Do you guys think after the Mimic took over Fiona's role, Edwin fucked the Mimic too? Dear Lord, guys, the fanfic writers are about to go apeshit with this. Inputting the code, we enter one of the final rooms and find Rufus number 7. Pat pat. We also get to hear an audio recording that is so fucking confusing I don't even want to talk about it, nor do I even know where to begin talking about it. Basically, in this recording, Edwin sounds like he's hurt, as he continues to ask M2, which by the way is what they call the Mimic in this game, for help and to call an ambulance. The Mimic, who at this point is mimicking Edwin, is talking to Edwin like Edwin is David. My brain is about to fucking explode. So, Edwin is dying and begging the Mimic for help, but the Mimic is in fucking La La Land and is pretending to be Edwin, and is pretending that the dying Edwin is David, and is neglecting the fake David, who is Edwin, who needs help and is dying. Does that make sense? I don't blame you if you think it doesn't, because it's confusing as fuck. We enter a hidden surveillance room and run cradle.exe like Fiona asked us to. But the Mimic finds us and the final chase ensues. We jerk off a generator which starts a fire because it wouldn't be a FNAF game without one of those, now would it? And we enter an elevator, leaving the Mimic on that floor. As we travel up in the elevator, Fiona begins talking through the intercoms to the Mimic and calling it Edwin, which would lead me to believe that Edwin somehow put himself into the Mimic while he was dying? Or maybe they're pulling a complete 180, and in that recording we just heard, the Edwin begging for help is actually the Mimic, and the real Edwin is the one pretending that the dying Edwin is David? I swear to God, this has to be one of the most mindfuck type shit I've ever seen in my life. After exiting the elevator, the final chase ensues. Running through really tight corridors, not only is the Mimic, or is it Edwin chasing us? I have no fucking idea at this point. But on top of that, a bunch of little fucked up looking munchkin robots are chasing us as well. They vaguely remind me of the little smiling critters from Poppy Playtime. We run onto a small metal bridge and the Mimic drops down in front of us, but before it can pounce on us like I pounced on an Arby's beef and cheddar, another metal platform falls out of the sky and crushes that bitch. But the chase is still not over. We have to crawl through the burning building as the little fuckhead abominations crawl after us, hop onto a roller coaster cart, and finally we can relax as it drives us to the exit. Just kidding! It drops us off next to a bunch of fire, and we have to run through the burning building into the parking lot where even more little gremlins surround us. We jump into the van and we're out of that bitch, still with our key and the Mimic blueprints in our arms. As we race away from the building, the little bitching nematodes attack our van, and if that wasn't enough, somehow the Mimic has also gotten onto our van and punches the shit out of the windshield. The van crashes, and as we come to, the Mimic reaches in and grabs our key from us, attaching it to its body and leaving us to die in the burning vehicle. The Mimic, Edwin, whoever the fuck it is, didn't want to kill us. It seems it only wanted the blueprints, but I'm not sure why. And that's where the extended bad ending comes to a close. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Did I say the extended bad ending? What I meant to say earlier was the true ending. Yes, I'm 100% serious. That is the true ending to Secret of the Mimic. No matter what you do, you still lose in the end. The Mimic will always beat you. But what about the New Game Plus secret ending? Wait, Dxtr, there's a New Game Plus? What does it add? A bunch of fucking nothing, really. If on New Game Plus you collect all 25 collectibles and put them in the inventory, complete moon.exe, and go to get the true ending, you'll be able to unlock a bunch of doors you couldn't open previously in the house section. You'll be able to collect 6 different cassettes, which will open a vent. Following the vent will bring you to a bedroom, which can only be assumed to be David's. Inside, you'll find a podium with a book on it. If you put the white tiger collectible on top, the Mimic, pretending to be David, will creep out of the closet. A recording will start playing, reading him a story. Every so often, the story will stop, which makes the Mimic mad. It will transform back to normal and try to attack you. You'll need to continue the story by pressing the correct buttons. You'll notice each button represents a Five Nights at Freddy's character. A bear for Freddy, a rabbit for Bonnie, a chicken for Chica, a fox for Foxy, an alligator for Monty, and a dog for... who the fuck knows? Roxy? I know she's a wolf, but eat my ass. The order you need to press the buttons is rabbit, chicken, dog, and bear. After that, the Mimic will tweak the fuck out and you'll be able to inject the original M2 schematics, which was supposed to be David, back into the Mimic. It will then transform back into David. grab the tiger, and go to sleep in the bed. Then the true ending continues to play out how it did before. What does this weird little secret ending tell us though? Well, here are my initial thoughts. Note, I am no expert theorist, and I'm probably about to be wrong as fuck. They call the mimic M2 throughout this game. M2, I'm assuming, was supposed to be David after his death. That's why I think we downloaded the blueprints for the mimic, or M2, who was David, and injected it back into the mimic in the secret ending. Because obviously, once we do that, it stops attacking us and just plays as David. M1, who isn't explicitly mentioned in this game, I'm assuming is Fiona, who I'm also going to make a stretch about and say she's also Glitch Trap. I'm thinking the Mimic and Glitch Trap are completely different, and are just two iterations of the same idea. Maybe that was obvious, and maybe I'm completely fucking wrong. I have no idea. I think that's honestly what the secret of the Mimic was. I think that the secret is that there are two of them, technically. The endoskeleton, M2, or David, and Glitch Trap, M1, or Fiona. Where Edwin falls into this, aside from creating both of them and apparently seemingly every major animatronic from all of the games and all the fucking spring locks? Again, I'm not sure. I like to complain about games. Analysis is not my strong suit. But as far as I'm aware, that is all Secret of the Mimic has to offer. In all honesty, I went into this game expecting to hate it. But it's honestly now one of my favorite official Five Nights at Freddy's games, only being beaten by Pizzeria Simulator. Seriously, nothing can beat that final Henry monologue. It's very clear that Steelwool has learned from their mistakes in Security Breach. There are plenty of questions left to answer, like which ending in this game is canonical, and if it's the secret ending, then how is the Mimic in Security Breach? I'll leave actual talented people to figure that out while I keep making sex jokes and yelling at horror games. Again, I believe in terms of gameplay that this game is solid. I do think it starts to lose a lot of steam after the nurse chase, and I think that the final fight against the Mimic is a bit underwhelming. But I also feel like that was somewhat intended. Of course we were supposed to lose. We know the Mimic appears in later games. There was never a way to properly defeat it, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. Well guys, another day, another new FNAF fan game coming out of the woodworks, and that FNAF fan game being spammed in my comments until I cover it. Usually when this happens, of course, I'm inclined to look at the project that people are talking about, and a lot of the time I add that game to my list of games to play over on Dxtr Black. Well, today is no different. One of the newest FNAF fan games to come out this year is none other than Fred and Pals. The game we'll be covering in today's video. Plenty of people have asked to hear about this one, and for a pretty damn good reason. There's a lot to talk about. So strap in as I talk about the highs and the lows of Fred and Pals. Wasting no time at all in detaching my balls and gently tossing them into night one, we already have a bit to talk about. Mainly the tools at our disposal, how they function, and why it makes me want to put my balls in a meat grinder. To start, we have several directions we can look in inside of our office. Obviously, we can look directly in front of us, to both sides of us, and of course, behind us. In front of us is our camera system. To our left and right, we have our doors, and right behind us is a power switch, but we'll talk about that later. What is important is this little handheld device we have, the SMU. While looking behind us or while standing next to either of the doors, we'll be able to pull up this device. While it's held, you'll be able to select any of the 4 characters in this game. And by holding down the trigger, we can shoot something in the direction we're aiming. What are we shooting? That I don't know the answer to. The device only has 3 shots in it before it needs to recharge, so we can't just be spamming this thing throughout the whole night. Unfortunate, I know, but I guess video game balancing will do what it has to do. Speaking of these characters we need to shoot, who are they? Well, actually, before we talk about that, you're getting ahead of yourself. We need to talk about the cameras first. Oh boy, the cameras. This is a lot more than you think it's going to be. Fred and Pals decided that the camera system is where they needed to deviate from the normal FNAF game. And while I do appreciate the creativity, I don't appreciate it by itself. I want to preface, it's not bad, it's just a lot. To start, there is a metric shitload of cameras. Of course, my favorite thing when it comes to cameras, you can't move your mouse to select which one you want to use. You have to use A and D to scroll through each of the cameras. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. However, unlike most other FNAF games that use this mechanic, it's not the slowest thing on planet Earth. No, quite the opposite, actually. You can scroll through cameras so quickly that sometimes you'll surf through 2 on accident. It is incredibly easy to do this and will 100% lead to you getting lost as to which camera you're currently looking at, and figuring out how far away you are from the camera you actually want to look at. Speaking of looking at the cameras, let's talk about how fucking sick these ones look. They use night vision, which is why they're so green, but it also puts this crazy filter over them, which I think looks incredible. But hush up, I'm not done talking about how the camera controls. I know I'm all over the place with my explanations right now, but I don't care. You may be thinking while looking at these cameras, hey Dexter, these camera shots are kind of small. Why aren't the cameras scrolling back and forth? Fantastic question. The answer to that is you have to scroll them yourself. I'm getting flashbacks to late shift at Nintendo World. Please don't do this to me again. You have to click and drag with your mouse to scroll the cameras. But the best part, the cameras scroll in the opposite direction that you drag it in. So that's a bit disorienting to get used to, but get used to it, you must. The last thing to talk about before we move on to the threats, moving back to the doors, on top of being able to murk animatronics with our SMU, we can also close the doors like normal people. However, the doors are controlled with a crank of all things for some odd reason. No idea why, that seems pretty weird, but that means that the door can only be closed as long as you're holding it. But we'll get more into doors and how useful they are a bit later. For now, let's talk about the one threat this night introduces, Fluppy. Yes, by the way, I'm serious. That is actually this character's name. It's really just Bonnie, but the devs thought that the name changes in this game is what they needed to crack down on. Don't get me wrong, I love all the silly names in this game, but I do need to point out how silly they are. Fluppy's goal is to make it to your left door, just like Bonnie from FNAF 1. He will slowly creep through all of the cameras until he gets there, and this is where I want to mention how fucking nasty these characters look, especially the poses that they're put in on these cameras. Seriously, look at Fluppy, bro! Tell me it doesn't look like he's a child predator. He does! Child predator ass rabbit. Look at that. Fucking look at that look in his eyes, dude. What do you think he doing on a regular basis besides grooming minors on Discord? Anyways, moving past that, once Fluppy gets to the storage closet and has a successful movement opportunity, he will enter the doorway to your office. However, you will not be able to see him in your doorway since it's too dark. This gives you a reason to be keeping track of him on the camera, because if you don't, you're going to get fucked up because he doesn't make a sound cue when he's at your door. When he is at your door, you need to pull out your gun, select Fluppy, and well, just watch what happens next. Boom, bitch! I didn't like that. Yeah, honestly, one of the creepiest animations I've ever seen. The moment I saw this, I knew this was going to be getting a Dexter White video, and here we are now. Once you shoot him, he will go back to the stage and the cycle will continue. Survive until 6 a.m. and we'll move on to night 2. Night 2 is pretty much the same as night 1. To start, we obviously get a phone call from the phone guy. He asks us if we used our SMU on Fluppy. Obviously, we know we did. He says they found him standing in the back room looking up at the light. They went to grab something, and when they came back, he was back on stage. I have a real question. Why on earth? Why the fuck ever would you work at a place like this? You're telling me that the robots are moving, you don't know why they're moving, you're positive they shouldn't be moving, and yet here you are, still working while they're doing so. I feel like any sane person would get the fuck out of there immediately, but I digress. Night 2 introduces one new threat, that being Chica, or as this game calls her, Henrietta. Henrietta, as I'm sure you could have assumed, works in the exact same way as Fluppy does, except she attacks your right door instead of your left. Same rules apply to her. When she enters the doorway, which just like Fluppy, you won't be able to see, all you have to do is select her on the SMU and blast her ass and she'll go back on stage. This night did bring up a concern that I had, however, and that comes with the way the cameras operate. I mentioned how you can't just select any camera that you want, and you have to surf through each of them one by one. Mechanics like that always make me nervous in FNAF games since it takes away a large element of your control. And in a genre like FNAF where control isn't really something you have, I'm sure you could understand how this would get pretty scary. So this brings up the beginning of a flourishing strategy. To avoid switching cameras as much as possible, I needed to figure out which cameras were the last cameras that both Fluppy and Henrietta appeared on. That way I could just camp those cameras and not have to worry about constantly following them around. So I learned that Fluppy's last camera is the storage room and Henrietta's last camera is the delivery camera. And with those two important pieces of information in my noggin, we're safe to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, a new character is added. This character leads to a new strategy needing to be thought up. But before we talk about this new character, I want to talk about the phone call we get on this night, as it gives some pretty interesting information. To start, Phone Guy mentions that Henrietta was found in the kitchen banging pots and pans, but when he entered to investigate, she froze, which I think is really fucking creepy. It's like some Toy Story shit. She only moves when you're not looking. He explains that she's supposed to do that during the day to make the kids think she's cooking, but during the night, it should be impossible. The second thing he brings up is their head technician who should be coming to fix this problem. His name is Will. Now, could it be a coincidence that the name of this technician is a shortened version of FNAF's main antagonist? Well, yes, it very well could be. Do I think it is? No, not really. We don't get much information about him on this night, however. Anyways, moving on to the threat this night introduces. Voss. This game's Foxy. Except you want to hear something really funny? He doesn't work how Foxy works at all, and he actually makes me piss fire. Voss is present in the sheriff camera. If you pull up your camera, you'll notice several areas are red and have an electricity symbol present next to them. Throughout the night, Voss will progress through multiple stages on his starting camera. When he leaves this camera, you will hear him whistle. When he whistles, that signals to you that he has gone to one of the cameras with a fuse box. You will have to quickly find which camera he went to and hold space to send him back. So, technically another find them on the camera mechanic, which I'm not too thrilled about. However, at least there's only 4 cameras he can be on. And if you're anything like me, you remembered the tap pattern to get to each one so you can quickly navigate all of them. Oh yeah, and I totally forgot to mention that one of the fuse boxes is directly behind you. I totally forgot that my office has one of those too. Oh my god. I'm paranoid. Yeah, that caught me off guard pretty well and kind of scared the shit out of me, but hey, I think that's actually really cool that during a find them on the camera moment, the character can also choose to show up in your office. Do I like that it's a find them on the camera mechanic? No, but at least it's slightly different than the usual. But knowing that he makes a sound cue, the strategy from last night hasn't changed all that much, and we can move on to night 4. Night 4 brings a threat I'm honestly not sure how to beat, if I'm being completely honest. Quick recap of the phone call. Voss is misbehaving like Fluppy and Henrietta have been, and Fred did something odd. He stopped performing during the day and leaned forward, a bunch of oil spilling out of his chest. Phone Guy used the SMU to restart him, but instead of continuing to play, his head just snapped towards him. Personally, I would shit myself. Apparently using the SMU in front of customers is against the rules, and now Phone Guy has a meeting with the executives tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. I personally think that's a little silly. What would they prefer he do? Just leave Fred leaning with oil leaking out of him in front of the children so they think he fucking died? What would have been a better choice in these guys' eyes? Anyways, tonight introduces Fred, and like I said, I'm not totally sure how he works. And that will make sense as I talk about him, I promise. Fred will slowly make his way to your office, and he can attack either of your doors. Every time he moves, he laughs, so that's nice. And when he's at your door, he also laughs. So following him on the cameras is not necessary at all, which I love since there's already a lot in this game. Now, when Fred gets to your door is when I get confused. You can see me live trying to figure out how to deal with him over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. At first, I just tried using the SMU on him, which seemed to work when I did, but then he killed me. The next thing I thought was maybe he's just a close the door on him character, so I tried that, but then this happened. Oh shit, I don't think I'm ever supposed to let him get here. Or maybe I'm supposed to flash him and then hold it shut? Oh boy, come on. Turn 6 a.m. right fucking now. Uh-oh. Please, Chica, be nice. Floppy can't hurt me. That was so gay what I just did right there. So yeah, he'll just pound on the door for the rest of the night. And if you ever let go, you immediately die. So obviously in that clip, I beat the night. And with the way I now write my Dxtr White videos, I haven't actually attempted night 5 at the time of writing. But if I had to guess, you have to flash Fred with your SMU, then close the door on him. But I guess I'll get myself confirmation on night 5. All right, night 5. The night I said I'd get confirmation on Fred's mechanic. I actually think writing the way I do bodes great for how shitty this game is at explaining anything. This night is the night I tried flashing Fred with the SMU and then closing the door. Spoiler alert, it did nothing. He still just pounded on the door the entire night. So that brings up the question, how the fuck am I supposed to deal with this guy? Well, I've got one more theory, but before I talk about it, let's talk about this night's phone call. Not much happens in it, but Phone Guy does tell us the meeting with the higher-ups didn't go well, and that he's getting fired. He said someone will be coming to collect his things, but they didn't tell him who. I find that odd because from everything that I know, you collect your things and someone is with you to make sure you don't, steal anything. That's how it went when I got let go from my previous job. So I find it weird that he doesn't even get to do that. He says that the building is closed to the public and explains that the only reason we're still here is because of a safety protocol. Now, I usually wouldn't question an explanation like that. However, Phone Guy laughs and says, "Yeah, right," after saying so. But he doesn't elaborate further. He says tonight is his last and that he'll be fired, so I doubt we'll be hearing from him tomorrow. Now, on to my theory on how Fred works. Throughout this video, you might have been wondering, Dxtr, if you didn't know how to deal with Fred, how the hell have you made it this far? And the answer to that question is, I just got really lucky. I got very lucky that Fred only attacked me once on each of the nights he was present. I got very lucky that he only chose to attack near the end of the night. I also got lucky that Fluppy, hands down the most aggressive character in the game, happens to attack the same door that Fred chose to attack, so that while I held it closed for the whole night, Fluppy was unable to get in, and I'm incredibly lucky that both Henrietta and Voss chose not to attack me after Fred had gotten to my door. This is hands down the weirdest situation I've ever had while playing a FNAF game. I've never not understood how a character worked and still have been able to get through the nights with said character active. But anyways, my new theory on how Fred works is a sad one that makes my penis invert like a groundhog. I'm thinking you have to not allow Fred to ever get to your door by using the go back feature on the cameras to constantly push him back. Is this terrible? Yes. But that's exactly why I think that's what this game is going to want me to do. We'll find out on the final night. But I think this shows a great point of how you really need to explain things to your player. I should not be struggling this hard to figure out what a character does. Sure, you could argue that the Phone Guy saying Fred's head snapped towards him when he used the SMU was a hint to not use the SMU on him, which sure, I think that's a bit silly, but we'll roll with it. But even if that was the case, the game explained to me how the other characters worked in detail. Why not Fred? Also, if I can't use the SMU on Fred, then why the hell is it even an option on the SMU unless to hint at the fact that I can use it on him? Maybe I'm just going insane, but I don't think I am. At least give me a death explanation like a lot of FNAF fan games do. I love that shit. Anyways, time for us to move on to the final night. Hopefully it's not too bad. Okay, so night 6. Needless to say, is not even remotely close to what I expected it to be at all. But that's not a bad thing. Kind of. Let me explain. This night begins with us getting another phone call. If you're anything like me, you may be wondering who could be calling us, considering the Phone Guy, whose name is Dan, by the way, I just never mentioned that, was fired. Well, a man by the name of William Afton is calling us. Remember that weird technician named Will I mentioned earlier? Yeah, it wasn't a coincidence like I suspected. William tells us he's been watching us throughout the 5 nights we've been here and tells us that our run ends tonight. This night serves as a semi-boss fight night, as once the night begins, you'll notice all of the animatronics disappear off of the cameras and are replaced by only William inside of the Spring Bonnie suit. You might be wondering where the rest of the characters went, and here's your answer. Ew. Hold up. The ghosts are fucking around me. Hello? How did you guys get here? What do you have in your hand? Is that a knife? Bitch, don't come near me with that thing. So yeah, that's pretty terrifying. Anyways, how do you deal with Afton? Well, here's actually the really funny part about that. You don't. Because you can't. All of the characters are blocking your doors, preventing you from moving over to them. So when William gets to your office, you'll be dead no matter what. However, you getting knocked out by William in the office is intended, as after you come to, you'll find yourself in the back room of the building, stuffed inside of a springlock suit, with William standing in front of you. He has a classic villain monologue, and I'll just let him do the talking.
Good morning. So, finally awake? Head still ringing? Do you feel that? The weight, the locks tightening? That's the sound of control. Every bolt, every spring. My design. They call me a monster, a murderer. But I built life. I give them purpose. The world out there forgets. But inside these walls, they remember. You'll join the show now. You'll keep them company. That's what you wanted, isn't it? To be part of something bigger. The difference between us, I learned how to survive it. And I will always come back.
Thinking that we're going to be left for dead, we notice a phone on the desk in front of us. This night has us make our way over to this phone to call for help. However, we're obviously in a springlock suit, so that really isn't going to be a walk in the park exactly. We have 3 things that we can do during this section. We could walk forward slowly and lift either of our arms up. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see 3 rectangles on both sides. These are how many spring locks are in each of our arms. If all 3 go off in either, we lose. Also, if we walk for too long, our danger meter will turn red and the head of the suit will snap shut. Whenever you're holding up your arm, that arm's spring locks can't be activated. However, you can't lift up both arms at the same time. So you really have to balance which one you hold up while walking. Generally, this is the strategy. Hold up one arm and walk forward 3 steps. Switch arms and take another 3 steps. Repeat this process until the danger meter on the bottom of the screen turns yellow. Once it does, switch from taking 2 steps to only taking 2, since when the danger level is yellow, you can't really take any more than that. After completing all of that, we make it to the phone and call authorities.
911, what's your emergency?
Fred and pals. Old site. Parts and service. The suit, I'm trapped. It's crushing me.
Sir, stay calm. What is your name?
Doesn't matter. Listen. There are bodies here. Kids. Inside the suits.
Say again?
He did it. The technician Will. William Afton.
Is he present?
Yes. Somewhere nearby. Locked me in. I tried to stop him.
The rescue units are dispatched. Stay online with me and keep talking.
The children. They won't let me go.
Sir, what is that noise? Hello? Hello?
Authorities have apprehended William Afton, former technician for Fred and Pal's Pizza Entertainment. Following an anonymous emergency call, authorities conducted a thorough investigation inside the abandoned pizzeria. They recovered the remains of the missing children, trapped within the animatronic suits, and also discovered the security guard's fate sealed within another suit. Evidence confirmed William's role in the horrifying events. With the truth finally revealed, the pizzeria was closed permanently and the community could begin to heal. Though the security guard did not survive, their courage brought justice. William Afton and his grim legacy will remain forever trapped within the darkness of Fred and Pals. And now, at last, the soul of the children find peace and can move on, freed from their torment, leaving behind a sense of calm and healing. And there you have it. With that, we get the good ending, and Fred and Pals comes to a close. Overall, I think Fred and Pals was very fun, albeit a short fan game, which there's obviously nothing wrong with. This game has such a recognizable art style, and I especially love the way the cameras look. This game was wonderful at building atmosphere, the gameplay loop is interesting enough with the length of the game, and the ending does something completely different, which is always super awesome to see. Also, if you were curious, since the final night isn't a typical night, I never actually got the chance to go against Fred again to see how he worked. And at the time of writing this, I still don't know exactly how to deal with him. But I honestly think it's a lot funnier if I don't tell you, since I never learned how it worked and I was still able to beat the game. My guess is that you have to push him back in the cameras, but unless someone in the comments explains it, I'll never know, and I think that's funny. I've covered several overwhelming FNAF games on my channel before, and I'm sure I'll cover many more in the future. Today is no different. I've recently stumbled across a fan game dev by the name of Solar Neon, responsible for Late Shift at Nintendo World, which is in a video I've made recently with a very good song along with it. Well, call me surprised when I found out that Solar has actually been working on an entire series of FNAF games, and that 2 of the 6 of them have already been released. Knowing that, I couldn't help myself but get sucked right in, and now I'm going to force you to be sucked in as well. Today, we're going to be talking about Swing Shift at Farley's, a FNAF fan game with some of the darkest and most sinister storytelling I've ever seen. Before we start talking about the actual gameplay loop this game has to offer, I first want to talk about the stylistic choices of this game. Something I noticed is that Swing Shift at Farley's really feels like FNAF 1. A lot of games try to replicate the style and feel of FNAF 1, but I honestly don't think many are capable of doing it. Farley's is definitely one of them. The overall look and feel of the game really reminds me of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, which makes the game feel nostalgic. I love it. Anyways, moving on to talking about Night 1. There is plenty to talk about. Look at the length of the video. Again, the person that made this game also made Late Shift at Nintendo World, so you know we're about to see some of the most creative shit you've ever seen in your entire life. To start, there are a lot of places you're able to move, but before we go down the list talking about them, describing the doors is very important. Swing Shift at Farley's doesn't use a typical power system, which I love. It makes my dick not feel like it's on fire. However, the doors do have their own type of power system involved. When a door is closed, the door's fuse will quickly decrease. If it empties completely, then obviously the door will be forced open. So that bodes the question, what the fuck are we going to do about that? Very epic answer, I will say, and this brings up probably my favorite mechanic. As I said, there are multiple rooms you can go to from the office. Turning to the left door, you can turn once more and go to some weird back room area. I think this is a hallway. Then, turning once more, you can go to a storage room. Inside of this storage room, you can grab a new fuse. But of course, it's not just as simple as grabbing the fuse, as there is a minigame you have to complete first. A bar will appear at the bottom of your screen, and an arrow will slide back and forth. You have to time and click when the arrow is in the middle of the bar 3 times in a row for you to be able to pull out the fuse. I guess we have to really put our backs into picking up this fuse that probably weighs as much as all of the food in your mom's fridge combined. Get it? Because a fuse is very light, and your mom's fridge is empty because she ate it all? Yeah, you got it. Directly behind you while looking at the camera monitor is where your fuse box is located. You can remove an empty fuse and replace it with a new one you grabbed. However, the fuse has to be empty before you can replace it. So this will lead to you having to forcefully make your door run out of power at times. But that will make more sense once we start talking about the actual threats this night introduces. Speaking of which, let's do that now. Night 1 only introduces 2 threats. However, they both go on to serve a very important purpose. So let's talk about Basil first. Basil is this weird fucking dog thing. His goal is to attack your left door. He will make his way through the cameras and eventually make it to your door. However, something interesting you'll notice about Basil and your hallways for that matter is that they have no lights. So you won't actually be able to see Basil at your door, nor does he make a sound cue informing you he's there. So that poses the question, how are you supposed to know he's there? Something about Basil, and every animatronic in this game, is that unlike characters from some other FNAF games, they will never move. backwards. So once Basil gets to his final camera before attacking, once he leaves that camera, you know for a fact he's at your door and you need to close it. This leads to you needing to constantly watch the cameras to track the characters, something I've noticed a lot of other FNAF games are unable to do without adding a music box or finding them on the cameras mechanic. See, fellow game devs, this game is proof that you can find an interesting way to use the cameras that isn't those two things. Basil will bang on the door when he leaves so you can open it again. In general, one fuse usually lasts about 2 attacks from characters before you should let it run out and replace it. Charlie is the next character introduced, and she does literally the exact same thing as Basil, except she attacks your right door. Not much more to say about her. Night 2 introduces 2 new threats, each of them doing something different, adding a lot more stress to this game. It's during this night I noticed just how hard this game was truly going to get throughout the later nights. Because even just on night 2, you're already getting dogpiled, and the reflexes and balancing skills you'll need drastically increase. The first and most recognizable threat added is Florence. He is the Foxy equivalent of this game. He is in fucking jail. No, I'm not kidding. He's literally behind bars. Throughout the night, he'll make his way through several phases before bum rushing your office like your mom bum rushed the cafeteria in her school years, canonically revealing that she's had this terrible eating habit all her life. Of course, watching him on the cameras will slow him down, but with several other characters that will require you to also constantly be watching them, it's safe to say that you won't be stalling him nearly as much as you can stall Foxy, as you do actually have to be looking at him. Unlike Foxy, Florence can attack whichever door he wants. And also, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to force his attack to happen earlier. With Foxy, you could check the left hall, but there doesn't appear to be an equivalent for Florence. What you'll have to do is listen to hear which side his footsteps come on and close the respective door. This brings up a synergy with Basil and Charlie. As I said earlier, each fuse has enough power to block 2 attacks, maybe 3 if you cut it really close, which I wouldn't recommend. So having Florence attack a door that only has 1 attack left, and then noticing that Basil or Charlie is about to attack that door will really get your blood pressure to rise as you quickly whip around to do that quick time event minigame to get a new fuse. I love the stress this character brings, I can't lie. The final threat this night introduces is Dominic. He brings on an entire new mechanic into this game. In your office, you'll now see that you're able to look up. Doing so, you'll find a vent. Hooray! I can't wait to see what this asshole is about to do. Dominic appears in the same camera as Florence. When he decides he's going to try to get to you, he will move to the back room. On this back room camera, you will see a new pop-up at the bottom. It's a heater for the vent. I'm sure you can see where this is going. When Dominic leaves this backroom camera, it means he has just entered your vent. However, that doesn't mean you should blast the vent just yet, as after you use the heater, you'll have to wait for it to cool down. And just because Dominic is in your vents doesn't mean he'll be combated by the heater just yet. This is the point in time where you'll need to constantly check the vent above you to see if you can hear him banging around inside of them. If you don't hear him, don't blast him. When you do hear the banging, this is when you should go to the camera, charge up the heater, and activate it. You do have to be looking at the vent to hear the banging, so don't think you can just avoid looking up, because unfortunately, you cannot. Night 3 is a doozy, adding 1 new threat that in turn adds 1 new mechanic, enough to make everyone's urethra begin to leak blood. So let's talk about her. The threat that Night 3 introduces is Whitney, and Whitney introduces your flashlight. I bet you can already guess what she's going to do. Whitney has 3 avenues she can attack you from: your left door, your right door, and the vent above you. She will wander around the cameras and eventually pick one to attack. When she is at one of those locations, you have to spam your flashlight at her until she goes away. However, something you may have wondered, and no, this flashlight does not work how most FNAF flashlights tend to, as this one is much worse. The rate at which the battery drains from this flashlight is a lunacy. So, to compensate, you're able to charge it back up. But how do you do this, you might ask? Well, on the cameras, you will see a new pop-up. Using this pop-up, you can slowly recharge your flashlight. The problem with this? Obviously, aside from the fact that it's just a fucking music box, which I hate, is that the camera in which this pop-up is on teleports to a random camera whenever it damn well pleases. Did you just fucking hear me? The music box mechanic, aka my second least favorite mechanic of all time, is a find them on the camera mechanic, aka my number 1 least favorite mechanic of all time. This fucking charging flashlight pop-up is the combination of my two least favorite things, and they happen at the same goddamn time. You can't make this shit up, bro. When I first saw this, my penis instantly wilted like a flower and died. Fuck me. And that's not even the end of it, as Whitney behaves in the same way as Charlie and Basil. There is no sound cue for when she arrives at any of the 3 places she can arrive, and you also can't tell if she's there without flashing your light, which I've already explained drains way too quickly for you to just be flashing it all willy-nilly. So you have to track her exactly how you have to track Charlie and Basil. There's not even a crazy amount of characters, yet this is quickly becoming one of the most stressful FNAF games I've ever played. And don't even get me started on how stressful this game gets when you go about replacing your fuses. You will be spending a majority of your time staring at the cameras, especially on later nights when the characters are moving pretty quickly. So having to spend a fuck ton of time grabbing the fuse and replacing it will guarantee that you lose track of literally every character you were watching. It's so stressful, and while I'm not a huge fan of being stressed out, if you could believe that, I do still think it's really cool how this game is able to pull that off. Night 4, and again, just as Five Nights at Freddy's did, Night 4 introduces the big bad antagonist himself, Farley. And let me tell you, he's honestly probably the least threatening character this game's seen so far, with a mechanic that makes him sound a lot scarier than he really is. Let's talk about it. Farley works in the exact same way as Charlie. The goal is to make it to your right door. However, the big catch with Farley is that you can't see him on your cameras. And of course, we already know we can't see door characters at our door. So how do we know where Farley is? Well, every time that Farley moves, he will laugh, which by the way, if you were curious, is just FNAF 1 Freddy's laugh. You will have to keep track throughout the night of how many times Farley laughs, as every 5th laugh will signal that Farley is now at your right door and that you need to close it. And this is where this game introduces a mechanic so cool, yet so useless. In your office, you will now see you have a little notepad. Using this notepad, you will be able to leave little tally marks. Now, why would you need to leave little tally marks? Well, this is this game's way of letting you keep track of how many times Farley has moved so you don't have to just remember. Every time you hear him laugh, open your notepad and mark a line. Once you deal with his attack, switch to your eraser, erase it, and start again. I think this is super cute and unique. I've never seen a FNAF game do something like this before, as most would probably prefer you just remember it yourself because that's way more AIDS-inducing. However, the way the rest of this game controls does bring up an issue with this otherwise awesome mechanic. I have 2 hands, in case you weren't aware, and on my 2 hands, 5 fingers are attached each. What's stopping me from counting Farley's movements on my hand? Doing this is actually a much better choice in my opinion, since it eliminates the time it would otherwise take to drop the camera, open the notebook, mark it down, close the notebook, and then reopen the camera. I think there's a very simple way to solve this problem and further encourage the player to actually use the notebook. All you would have to do is make another mechanic use a keybind. For example, instead of Whitney and the QuickTime event to get the fuse being controlled by the mouse, why not bind both of those systems to your control key? That way the player will have one hand on the mouse and the other on the keyboard most of the night, making it so that using the in-game notepad would make much more sense since you wouldn't have that open hand. I think the idea of the notepad is super nice, and while totally unnecessary, I think if it was encouraged in a more natural way, it would actually be one of the most interesting mechanics I've ever seen in one of these FNAF fan games. But as it exists right now, I just don't see any real reason to use it. Night 5 doesn't have a whole lot to talk about, really just being a much more stressful version of Night 4. On my playthrough, which by the way you can watch over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, there was a point where I had to pretty much get 2 fuses in a row because I got unlucky with attacks. Honestly, one of the most stressful moments I've ever had playing a FNAF game. It was so cool. One interesting thing I do want to talk about on this night is the lack of a phone call. Just like FNAF 1, on Night 4, the phone guy gets beamed out of existence by an enemy. On Night 5, if you check the back room, you can see what I can only assume to be the phone guy with his head on an endoskeleton body. If there's one thing about Solar, the developer of this game, she does not hold back on the shock value of her games. That's what I love so much about them. Night 6 time, here we are. Spoiler alert, there's pretty much nothing to talk about, except two things. To start, there's no new threat. Night 6 is just a harder version of Night 5. However, if you look in the back room, you'll notice that the corpse is now missing. And this time around, we actually get a phone call. I'm not going to explain it because I literally can't, so just take a listen. Now you might be asking, Dexter, what the fuck was that and why did you even show it to me? Well, dear viewer, if you reverse it, you'll hear the following, which I've added captions to. For those of you wondering what any of that means, at the time of writing, I have no idea. And by the way, that inaudible line, I'm gonna need your guys' help with that. Let me know what you think it means. I even reached out to the game's creator, and even she told me that she forgot what the line said. So that's just awesome. But I'm not quite done talking about this game just yet. No, I found something interesting hidden inside of the game. On camera 9, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance for a character by the name of Midas to appear, acting as this game's Golden Freddy, even using the same laugh and hallucination sound as him. He enters your office and his jump scare plays. I'll just let you see it for yourself. So yeah, that's disturbing. As mentioned, that character's name is Midas. I have no idea who this character is supposed to be. However, I do know that we will be finding out, as Solar Neon plans on creating 6 games in the Farley series, and I'm totally looking forward to them. There are still a few more secrets I was able to uncover. In the room where you grab a new fuse box, you'll notice a stack of papers on the ground. Upon picking the papers up, you will see one of the following 3 papers. The first shows a wanted poster for a man inside of what appears to be a bunny costume. It's only a police sketch, but we can see they're wanted for murder. The second paper reads, "Bodies found in local river." In a shocking turn of events, the body of missing boy Thomas Fiver has been found under a bridge in Shantytown. According to the Utah Police Department, Thomas's body was stuffed inside a garbage bag with his head removed. The head has still not been recovered. A note addressed to the police was also found with Thomas's body, written by the Guillotine Killer. This has been revealed to be his 3rd victim. The Guillotine Killer, possibly giving a name to the killer in the previous paper, obviously being called that name for decapitating his victims. Another kid killer. Fantastic, but what did we expect, I suppose? And victim number 3. I wonder how many there are in total. The 3rd paper reads, 6 children now reported missing. Over the coming weeks, 6 children have vanished in Shantytown, Utah. While 2 of the missing children have no leads, it is believed that they are further victims of the infamous Guillotine Killer. Utah Police Chief Edward Cal has stated that they are expecting letters from the killer soon, potentially tying the 2 other children to his spree. Police are hoping to apprehend the killer soon. Well, that answers my question. 6 children this time around. Quite the hefty number, but nothing compared to my 12, but that's not important. What is important is that I lied and there's actually 1 other paper to be found. However, the only way you can get it is if you've been attacked by Midas. So, 1 in 10,000. Your chances aren't great, but lucky you, I'll just show you what the paper is. So it appears Midas came from another restaurant by the name of Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace. Also on this paper, you can see some possible other names for this character, being able to make out Mike, Monty, and Max. As you can tell, this is a napkin, clearly showing that this was a very early idea for a restaurant, even having multiple food ideas like burger and barbecue before settling on pizza, apparently stating that burgers are, quote, too easy to fuck up. And then of course, the sketch of Midas with his absolutely fucking massive veiny head. Disgusting, by the way. So, with the 5 other confirmed games on the way, there's still a lot to unravel this time. And you better believe I'll be here to cover it when it comes around. But as far as I'm aware, that's all Swing Shift at Farley's has to offer. Overall, I think this game is easily one of the most creative pieces of fan game work I've ever seen. Solar Neon is so open to trying new and unique things, and I love that. I'm super looking forward to the other 5 games, and I can't wait to cover them on Dxtr Black, and of course, over on this channel. Hold up, guys! As I was working on this video, the second game in the Farley series, Swing Shift at Farley's Jr., actually released. And I thought, well, why not add that game to this video as well? So instead of ending the video right here where I was about to, let's go ahead and jump into Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. So, this is kind of awkward, isn't it? I bet you were getting ready to click off the video and now we have a whole nother game to cover. Well, be grateful, I guess. Farley's Jr. starts with a very FNAF 2 style opening. We're sitting in the POV of who I can only assume to be Farley. We can look left and right and see Basil and Charlie accompanying us. Shortly after the minigame ends, we're booted to the main menu where we can see the toy animatronics. What the fuck? Like, these things literally look like the FNAF characters, but rest assured, they are not. Upon starting the game, we're greeted by a newspaper stating that this time around we aren't monitoring a restaurant, but an entire mall. Awesome. That doesn't sound like there's about to be a metric fuck ton of characters, now does it? Night 1 has a phone call that's like 5 fucking minutes long, and I'm not going to waste my time talking about it. It's your typical Night 1 bullshit, and he explains the characters we'll have to deal with. But of course, if I just let him do that, then I wouldn't really have a job, now would I? So let's start by talking about the tools at our disposal, because there are a hell of a lot more this time around. To start, let's get the obvious out of the way. We have a Farley mask that we can use. However, you may notice the 4 buttons inside of this mask. Don't worry, we'll talk about them in a bit. You can also use your camera to flash the hallway in front of you for a short period of time. However, every time you do, you'll lose 1 film reel. Throughout the cameras, you can find film reels lying around and pick them up. Also in the cameras, you can flash and hold your light on them so that you can actually see, which is very nice. You may also notice music box symbols on a good majority of the cameras. Don't worry, we will also talk about that in a bit. But that's really it in terms of mechanics that actually matter at this point in time, which means we can move on to talking about the threats this night introduces. Night 1 introduces a whopping 4 threats, already matching pretty much the entire crew of the first game, so this is about to get scary. The first ones we'll talk about are Basil Jr. and Charlie Jr., these being the toy variants of the originals. The reason I mentioned talking about both of them is because they both literally do the exact same thing, so no point in talking about them individually. If you couldn't guess because you have a brain deficiency, their goal is to make it to your office through the big hallway in front of you. Since this hallway in front of you is so dark, you won't actually be able to see them if they're there. However, there are 2 things you can do to verify if they are. To start, you can obviously flash the hallway with your camera and check. However, if you don't want to waste a film reel, there is another way. Characters in Farley's Jr. will not move backwards, so once they make it to the hallway camera, if you ever see them leave that camera, that guarantees they'll be in your hallway. So once you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is put your mask on. Except, as I'm sure you could have guessed, the buttons don't work like a normal FNAF mask. Upon a character entering your office, their eyes will glow 1 of 4 colors. Depending on which color they are is which color you'll have to press inside of the mask. Once you do this, their eyes will switch to another color. Repeat this process until you've pressed 4 buttons and they will finally leave your office. I don't think I need to explain to you how fucking awesome this is. Solar Neon was able to take one of the most overused FNAF mechanics of all time and add a twist to it that makes it feel new. Does it make a whole lot of sense? No, not really, but it's still really fucking awesome and I love it. The next threat this night introduces is Farley Jr. He works in the exact same way as Basil and Charlie Jr., but with one very frustrating difference. Remember how in the first game Farley would hide in your blind spots? Yeah? Well, Farley Jr. does the exact same thing, except this time around, he doesn't make sound cues when he moves. So that brings up the very appropriate question, how the hell are you supposed to know where he is? Fantastic question that is. If you look at your cameras, you'll notice a large tracker button at the top. Whenever you click that tracker, it will show you which camera Farley Jr. is currently in. However, every time you use the tracker, you have to wait an entire century to be able to use it again. This is literally the only way to tell where Farley Jr. is, so you'll have to get pretty lucky with your timings of this, especially on later nights. With the juniors out of the way, we can move on to the final threat that Night 1 introduces, that being the marionette. Oh boy. I promise you this thing is way worse than you could ever imagine. Of course, this marionette uses a music box mechanic. However, the music box is located on the desk in your office, so you don't have to open your cameras to use it, which I honestly thought was great. But is there a catch? Are you retarded? Of course there's a catch. There's always a catch. The marionette can move throughout the night. The way she moves? Take a fucking guess. Exactly! At random, she'll make a sound cue signifying that she's teleported to a random camera. Another find them on the camera mechanic mixed with a music box mechanic. All right, fine. I've liked everything Solar Neon has done so far. Maybe if I look deep inside my cold, dead heart, I can find it in me to look past this. Maybe. When the marionette moves, you'll have to find which camera she went to and toggle the music box to said camera using the music box button I mentioned earlier. So while yes, you can wind it from your office, you're still not free of the worst fucking mechanic ever thought of by man. So, that was a lot to introduce in one night, and we've still got 4 or 5 more of these to go. To discover how bad it's going to get, stick around, because I get the really funny feeling that the further we jump into this game, the further my sanity is going to split. Oh my god. I don't even know what to say. Here we are on night 2, and this night is really going to show just how fucking difficult this game is about to be. This night introduces several new threats, all of which make me want to stitch my asshole shut so that I can never shit again. Let's waste no time and start talking about them. Tonight introduces the withered characters, literally every single one of them. Well, except for one, but we'll talk about that asshole a little bit later. To start, let's talk about Withered Basil and Withered Charlie. I'm going to talk about these two together because just like their junior variants, they both fundamentally do the same thing. On night 2, you'll notice in your office you can now pull 2 gates closed on both sides of you. These gates are important for these 2 threats. Withered Basil and Charlie's goal is to get to your office through these gates. Basil will attack the left and Charlie will attack the right. Just like seemingly every other character in this game, you won't be able to see these two while they're at your doors, so you'll have to track them on the camera to be able to tell when they've disappeared to them. Once you know they're at your door, close their respective gates and wait to hear them hobble away. You know when I said their goal is to attack these doors? Well, I kind of lied because they both have one other form of attack, that being the hallway in front of you. Both characters will appear in the hallway camera. When they disappear, they will do one of 2 things. The first will be moving to a side camera to make their way to their gate. The other will be moving to your hallway just like the juniors do. When you know they're in your hallway, all you have to do is flash them and they'll go away. These 2 characters alone already add a bunch of stress to this gameplay loop, especially with them being able to attack in more than one way. But we're still not done. We have yet to talk about the final threat this night introduces, the Jailhound. Jailhound is an incredibly frustrating character, mainly because he forces you to use 2 means of defense against him, both draining a crucial resource and wasting a lot of time. Jailhound can only attack through your main hallway. You'll know he's there because thankfully he'll start talking to let you know that he is there. The first thing you'll need to do is flash him, using up one of your film reels. Then, and only after you flash him, must you put your mask on. If you put the mask on beforehand, he'll kill you. This is explained by the flash disorienting him enough for the mask to fool him. Pretty interesting explanation, I will admit. Once you put the mask on, he'll enter your office for a short period and leave. Unlike the juniors, you do not have to play the Simon Says minigame inside of the mask. So yeah, a metric shitload of stuff thrown on top of you on only the second night of the game. And let me give you a little spoiler. There's a lot more characters that are going to be added to this loop. And with each one, years of my life are plucked away like nose hairs. I only want to die a lot, guys, don't worry. But I'm not quite ready to move on to night 3, as during my playthrough of night 2, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I of course died a few times trying to beat night 2 as I got used to everything. One of those times that I died, I actually got thrown into a death minigame. So let's talk about that. In this minigame, we play as a girl named Crystal. We go to the house of a man named Mr. Martinez, which, judging solely based on the color of his dialogue tech, I'm going to assume he's this game's William Afton. Crystal asks if Terrence, who I can only assume to be his son, is around, as he hasn't been answering messages. Martinez says he's been locked inside of his room after what I can only assume to be a supposed incident. Crystal apologizes about someone named Toby, and at this point, we're not totally sure who that is. Martinez allows Crystal inside to go see Terrence, but when she goes to his room, Martinez is seen pulling out a syringe and following after her, clearly showing that he's about to do something terrible. The only question we'll be left with now is why, and who is Crystal? But with that, we're ready to move on to night 3. With night 3 coming along, we have even more characters thrown onto our shoulders, and I'm really not excited for it. We have another duo group of attackers that pretty much do the exact same thing. So let's talk about them first. These two characters are Balloon Boy and JJ. Yeah, that's right. Solar made JJ an actual threat in this game rather than just the Easter egg that she is in FNAF 2. Let's talk about Balloon Boy first. He will make his way to your left gate. Of course, like every other character, you won't be able to see him in your doorway. However, you won't have to watch him on the cameras either, as every time he moves, he'll make a sound cue. And the second sound cue he makes will signal that he's at your gate, and that you either need to close it or put your mask on. Either will make him go away. JJ is identical, except she attacks the right gate instead. Now, I mentioned these two were slightly different, and what they do if they get into your office is how they're different, since neither of them will actually end your run directly. If Balloon Bitch makes it into your office, he will quickly leave, but not before taking every single film reel out of your camera, forcing you to have to go through all of the cameras to find more. And at this point in the game, you really don't have the time to be doing that. Now, if JJ gets into your office, she'll do something so foul, I'm trying to hold back the vomit from spewing out of my mouth just thinking about it. If JJ gets into your office, she'll steal your fucking mask off the table. She will then teleport to a random camera in which you'll have to fucking find her and click on her in order for her to return it to your desk. Oh my fucking god, that is literally the most evil thing I've ever seen a character in a FNAF game do. Oh fuck. Oh, she took the fucking mask. I'm cooked. I didn't know she took the mask. I thought that sound cue from JJ was her. I thought the sound cue from JJ was her leaving. It was not. It was her grabbing my shit. She copped me. She copped on my shit. I'd rather JJ kill 6 more children than take my shit. I'm being honest. Oh, but guess what? We're still not done because there's still 2 more threats to talk about. I know I said 3 at the start of the night, but these 2 characters are basically 1 character, which is why I'm saying there's 2 more. These characters are Candy Cadet and Astro. The fuck me silly, backwards, forwards, upside down, flip me, bend me combo. Let me explain it. So, you'll need to watch camera 10 to see when either of these 2 leave. It's important you know who leaves first. If Candy leaves, he will approach one of your gates at random. You, of course, will not be able to see him at your gate without either flashing your camera or watching the cams to see when he enters. He also makes no sound cue either, so that's great. Once he's there, you'll need to close the gate until he leaves. However, shortly after Candy Cadet attacks, Astro will attack the other door shortly after. Now, you may be wondering why I mentioned how important it is for you to know who leaves camera 10 first. Well, that's because if Astro leaves first, he'll do something a bit different. If Asshole leaves first, he too will go to either of your gates. However, when he's at your gate, he'll start singing. You need to close which gate you hear him at until he leaves. And of course, when he does, Candy Cadickhole will soon attack the other side. These 2 add so much more unnecessary stress to this game, and Solar Neon knew exactly what she was doing when she made this. Asshole. Before we move on to night 4, I want to talk about another death minigame I got while working on this night. It's literally an exact copy of the Give Cake minigame from FNAF 2. The only major difference is that we play as Farley instead of Freddy, and instead of a random crying child, we see a girl come to the entrance who in the programming is named Charlie. Soon after, a car pulls up to the building and a man in a bunny mask gets out. Now, while I would imagine this person is probably Martinez, I do have to point out that in the code, this character's name is Guillotine. And if you remember from the first game, is the name of the serial killer. So it appears we get to see the abduction before one of his many murders. But with that, we can move on to night 4. It got worse, guys. Let me tell you, it got so much worse. Way worse than I could have ever imagined. Not only does Night 4 add 2 more characters, but it also adds a brand new mechanic that makes this game far more stressful than it already was. To start, let's talk about the new mechanic, being able to turn off the power to the building. I bet you can take a solid guess where this is going. When the power is off, you obviously can't check your cameras. However, you can still put your mask on and close your gates. With that in mind, now on to the 2 threats this night introduces. Let's start with the simplest one, Mangle. Mangle has 2 ways of getting into your office, the big hallway in front of you and the vent that's on camera 9. I've neglected to mention this vent up until this point because Mangle is the only character to interact with it. Plus, you can't even see or interact with this vent in any way regardless. When you see Mangle in your hallway in front of you, you'll have to shut the building's power off. She'll swoop into the office for a few seconds and then leave, wherein you can then turn it back on. The vent is pretty much the same, but since you can't see the vent, the way you'll know you have to shut the power off is when you hear her in your vent. Turning off the power throughout the night when watching the cameras is so integral to this game's cycle is absolutely brutal. And the final character introduced on this night doesn't help with that at all. Withered Farley is the last character introduced on night 4, and he serves to be one of the most stressful yet. Once Withered Farley makes a successful movement opportunity, he will teleport directly to your main hall. Every time you flash the hallway, you'll be able to see him. Throughout the night, he'll slowly creep his way towards your office, and once he enters, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my intro of him, you'll have to shut the building's power off until he leaves. Mazel tov! I want to die. This is every single threat in the game. And let me tell you, completing this night was honestly one of the hardest challenges I've ever put myself through. And we're not even on to night 5 yet. So I'm really not excited for all that. But there is still one thing I want to talk about before we move on to night 5, and that's another death minigame I got while playing night 4. In it, we play as an unknown character seemingly on a camping trip with another unknown character. Child number 2 wanders off and we go to follow him, only to go deeper and deeper into the forest as we lose track of him. When we find him again, we see him trapped in the back of someone's car as it drives off. Maybe got some inspiration from the FNAF movie, just a hunch. Shortly after, Farley jump scares us. And this leads to a small theory that I have. I get the feeling that for each of these minigames, depending on who jump scares us at the end of them is meant to hint at who the stolen child in said minigame would go on to possess. Just a hunch, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Anyways, on to night 5, and I'm really not excited for it, I can't lie. Thankfully, night 5 doesn't bring anything new to the table. I thank God for that every day that I wake up, because he knows better than anybody how I would have lost my mind had there been more animatronics added on this night. However, there is something very interesting to note about this night. 1, I never got a death minigame like I was hoping for, but that's fine. And 2, something very interesting happens once you complete the night. I'll let Dxtr Black take it away. Subscribe, by the way. Woo! Oh! I need to relax. Wait, what? Mangle still kills you? What the fuck? That's right. Mangle kills you. And when reading the newspaper after the fact, we see that we've been playing as Jeremy Fitzgerald this whole time. Wowee! I'm leaking. What? But with the information of our player now being dead, who's to say what's going to happen on night 6? I'm not sure, and I'm very, very excited. Night 6 is pretty interesting, so let's just jump right into it. To start, we're now playing as Mr. Martinez, both the man who was holding the syringe in an earlier death minigame we talked about, and the man I suspect to be the guillotine killer. In our phone call, we actually get to hear the conversation between Mr. Martinez and the phone guy, and I think listening to it for yourself will be much better than me describing it to you.
Fancy seeing you there, Mr. Martinez. And on a night like tonight.
Why are you interrupting my night, Gretchen?
You tell me, Vincent. Poking around my mall, and during an active investigation, no less. God. You know, I gave you a lot of time. More than I've given most of my vendors. But no. First your hunks of metal fuck with my staff. Then those kids go missing. The cops start ripping my business up. That poor Jeremy kid gets his head smashed in by one of your freaks. The one you told me you would fix. And I now find you there, doing God knows what.
Now what is that supposed to mean?
Oh, I think you've got a pretty damn fine clue.
Are you threatening me, Gretchen? I'm not sure baseless accusations are a good look for you.
Then let me make it simple. If you're not out by the time I get there, I'll throw you out myself.
Is that right now?
Yeah, it is. Want to know why? because I've been in this business long enough to know what scum is. Whatever mess you've made, I want it cleaned up. Otherwise,
Shit.
the police might be expecting a little tip soon.
I think this further adds to my confirmation that yes, Mr. Martinez is 100% the guillotine killer and this game's Afton. This night really serves to be a much harder version of Night 5. However, to my surprise, one new character is actually added, that being Midas, the secret character from the first game. He acts in the exact same way as Golden Freddy does in FNAF 2. Occasionally, when you drop your monitor, he'll be in your office. If you don't raise your monitor again fast enough, he'll kill you, easily becoming the most frustrating character in this game in my opinion, as the crazy amount of shit going on is already hard enough to keep track of in your head, but adding this bullshit guy on top of it really serves to make my head explode. However, it did lead to my crazy completion of Night 6. Fuck, I'm dead. What? Holy shit! Tell me that's not the craziest completion you've ever seen. Yeah, I thought so. But with that, Farley's Jr. closes down due to a bunch of bullshit that was completely expected, and Swing Shift at Farley's Jr. comes to a close. At least, that would be the case if we didn't have a bit more lore stuff to talk about, since with Midas actually showing up, I'm sure you could have assumed there's some stuff I was able to find. To start, by going into the extras menu and checking out the characters, moving over to the withered characters, you'll actually see missing posters for each of them, adding to my theory of depending on who jump scares you equating to who the dead child possessed, with Garrett possessing Farley, Charlie Emily possessing Basil, Terrence Martinez and Crystal possessing Jailhound, and an unknown person possessing Charlie. Why is this unknown? Well, because I never actually got Charlie's death minigame. But let's go take a look at it, shall we? In this minigame, we play as Susie Rosa. We walk around town until we eventually stumble across our dog, dead in the middle of the road, clearly being hit by a car. Shortly after, a car pulls up next to us and the guillotine killer steps out, telling us that he can fix our dog if we get in the car with him. And I'm sure you can imagine what he does to her next. And speaking of minigames, there's still plenty to cover. Let's rapid fire through the minigames I never got in my playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, starting with the minigame called Riverbed. We play as an unnamed little boy in the rain. We walk past the place where Susie's dog was killed, and continuing forward, we see the guillotine killer dropping the body of presumably one of his victims in the lake before he is then attacked. And if you remember, this is probably his third victim, which was referenced in one of the papers in Farley's 1. The next minigame is called Save Them. We play as Withered Farley as we follow the marionette through the building. She spells out save them as we travel, but before we can get to the exit, the killer steps in and smashes the marionette to pieces. And finally, we have Late Night, a minigame that's really just a cutscene. We watch a mother talking on a payphone while her daughter is clearly trying to get her attention. Eventually, she wanders off, only for us to see the killer's car whiz by, presumably, I would imagine, hitting her with it, although no sound cue is heard to indicate that. The mother goes to look for her, and then we get jump scared by the marionette, which would tell me that this little girl would go on to possess her. Oh yeah, there actually is another minigame that I got, I just didn't mention it for some reason, so I'll mention it now. It's called I'm Sorry. This one is also just a cutscene, and in a much different style from the others. A boy is sitting in the hospital with Mr. Martinez. They're watching the corpse of an unknown person completely wrapped in gauze. Looking back at Martinez, we see this unsettling image. And with that, that's all of the cutscenes in this game covered. However, we're still not quite done talking about stuff I was able to find. To start, there are several newspaper articles to read just like in the first game. Each appears at random when you click the paper stack in your office. They read, Marvelous Mimic Man. The winner of the 1995 Henton's Robotic Fair has been announced to be Vincent Martinez's Marvelous Mimic Man. This robot won due to its impressive state-of-the-art AI that allows it to near perfectly mimic the actions and poses of anyone around it. Vincent Martinez, the proud creator of the Mimic Man, has made a statement on winning first place. I am honored to receive this award. Thank you to the judges and especially the voters who made this happen. I hope to show you more of the Mimic Man and other creations like him soon. Farley's closes its doors. Lawsuit from Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated closes down beloved family restaurant. After a long and grueling trial, Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated has won its lawsuit against New Edge Incorporated, the owners of Farley's Fun Zone. The lawsuit alleges that New Edge Incorporated not only plagiarized multiple of its characters, but also stole confidential blueprints and schematics for their animatronic mascots. As a result of New Edge losing the lawsuit, they have been ordered to pay Showbiz Pizza Incorporated $3 million in damages. While New Edge has yet to make a statement, their decision to shut all of their 10 Farley's Fun Zone locations has sent a clear message. Obituaries: Abigail Leslie Emily, September 5th, 1954 to July 30th, 1985. Abigail was born on September 5th of 1954. She grew up in a lovely house down north before moving to Utah and marrying a brilliant husband and having a lovely daughter, both of which were unfortunately taken away from her too soon. Abigail tragically killed herself on the 30th of July, 1985 via a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. We hope that Abigail is in the warm light and with her husband and daughter. So, a robot that can mimic people made by Martinez, a plagiarism lawsuit for blueprints and schematics, and a woman who tragically killed herself, each with something redacted. And of course, after getting killed by Midas, there is an additional paper you can read. Tragedy at Midas's. 10-year-old boy bitten by animatronic. This afternoon at Midas's Galactic Pizza Palace, one 10-year-old boy, Tobias Martinez, was bitten by one of the establishment's animatronic characters. It was reported that he was shoved inside its mouth by 4 children who have yet to be identified. Police have not yet confirmed if this is a murder attempt or freak accident, although they are still investigating. Tobias is reportedly in critical condition, with his frontal lobe nearly severed. The owners of Midas's New Edge Incorporated have yet to make public statement on the matter, aside from suspending all operations at the restaurant. Tobias Martinez was bitten and killed at Midas's. I wonder if this isn't the person we see in the hospital bed in the I'm Sorry minigame, as this is clearly this game's equivalent to the Fredbear bite. And since we're drawing parallels, let's draw another one. In the weird phone call all the way in Farley's 1, the first line mentions a riverbed. And what do we see in one of the death minigames? That's right, the guillotine killer throwing a body into a riverbed. Whose body this is, though? No other than Thomas Fiver, Martinez's third victim. But with that, as far as I'm aware, is everything that the first 2 Farley's games have to offer. I'm incredibly excited for the rest of the series that Solar has planned, and she's actually shown me a sneak peek of the 3rd game. I'm obviously not going to spoil anything, but it looks crazy. Overall, both of the Farley's games are clearly heavily inspired by the original FNAF games, and even seem to be following the original pattern and story these games laid out. And I honestly really like it. Solar is very, very passionate about this project, and you better believe I'll be here to cover the rest of the games as they release. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or do you think Swing Shift at Farley's is just too close to the original FNAF games to be memorable? What is your favorite Roblox game? Don't answer that. I don't want to see any comments saying Forsaken, that game is terrible. Let me be more specific. What is your favorite Roblox FNAF game? Maybe you say FNAF 2 Reimagined. Maybe you say dog watching. Well, I personally have found a new FNAF Roblox series that we could add to the conversation. Today, we'll be talking about Five Nights at Marcus, a series many of you may have never heard about. However, with 3 games being in the series, I'm willing to bet you've heard of the 3rd. It's just a little game that goes by the name of Far From Land. Yeah. That's something even I didn't know about until starting to do work for this video. This series tries a lot of interesting things and succeeds and fails at a lot of them. Today, I'll be going over each of those things, so join me as we dive into the world of Five Nights at Marcus. And with Five Nights at Marcus, we obviously start with the first one, and night 1 of game 1. And with night 1 on the way, we bust a nut into our office and can start learning about everything important that we need to learn. To start, let's just talk about our office itself. Obviously, we have our monitors for our cameras in front of us, but we also have a picture of a cat named Oscar on our desk, and I think that's great. Also, if you open the drawer on your desk, you'll see another picture of Oscar. Just lovely. Looking up, we see a big vent, but we'll focus on that later. Turning around, we'll see the door to our office, which cannot be closed, which is a bit concerning just knowing the type of game we're playing right now. And behind us is also a maintenance panel, which we will be using to complete the night. How do we do that, you ask? Great question. On this maintenance panel, you will see several tasks we have to complete. That's right, Five Nights at Marcus uses a task-based completion system rather than a time-based one, which can be a blessing and a curse in some instances. The tasks are mind-numbing. Just press a button and wait for it to load 5 times and the night is over. But what about the threat this night introduces? That would seemingly be Marcus himself. You can find him on the cameras just laying on the fucking floor. He has no legs, so we can all laugh at him for being crippled. Where's your life alert, buddy, huh? Get up! Marcus will try to get to the door behind you. However, Marcus makes no sound cues, and because he has no legs, is not visible at the door or window either. So, how are you supposed to know when he's actually arrived? Another great question. Gosh, you guys are on a roll today. The answer is pretty simple. You really have to make sure you're watching him on the cameras, and once you see him leave camera 1, you'll know he's at your door. But Dexter, how are you supposed to keep him away? Oh my goodness, another amazing question. You're doing so well. Inside of your maintenance panel, along with your tasks menu, you also have a shock menu. Go to the shock menu and use the shock when Marcus is outside of your door and he'll scream like a bitch and run away. And then his cycle will continue. Night 1 is piss easy since Marcus barely moves, but don't worry, this is going to get much more complicated as we go. So let's move on to night 2. Night 2 rolls around and we have one new threat to talk about. And for some reason, I'm not gonna lie to you, this night serves to show me how stressful this game is about to become. Let's talk about it. The new threat on this night, not gonna lie, I don't know the name of him, so I'm just gonna call him Green Man. Green Man attacks in the same way as Marcus, except noticing him is a lot easier. When he gets to your office, he has 2 phases. One outside of your window, and one where he's standing in the fucking doorway. Which I can't lie, scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it. Oh. What was that? I didn't like that. No, I fucking didn't. What the fuck was that about? Which you can see in my full playthrough over on my second channel, Dxtr Black. Exact same thing as Marcus here. Whenever you see him in your hallway or at your door, shock his ass and he'll reset. Now, if you remember about 24 seconds ago, you'll notice I said that this night is stressful. You might be wondering how that's even possible considering there's only 2 threats and they both do the exact same thing. Well, my reasoning for this surrounds Marcus and the fact you have to watch him so closely on the cameras. Marcus moves incredibly quickly, it seems. Like, way faster than I would have ever expected for a Night 2 character to move. I was expecting to be able to do my tasks in bursts of 50% before checking on him, but that got me killed very quickly. We gotta get this thing to 100 before we go check on him, though. That's my goal. We gotta get you to 100, bro. Perfect. Fuck me in my ass. Okay, well, I didn't expect you to be that quick. He was a quick guy. Then I decided to do them in bursts of 25%, and that was working up until the point in the night where Green Man starts moving. Then I had to start doing my tasks in bursts of 10%, and even that felt like I was cutting it down to the wire with time management. And now, here's the really weird part. Throughout the first half of the night, Marcus was moving at the speed of sound. The moment Green Man activates, Marcus sits in his final camera for the rest of the night without moving. And this is so stressful for exactly the reason you think it is. With Marcus in his last camera, it only takes him one more movement opportunity to reach the office, which means I'm on edge the whole night, constantly checking to make sure he doesn't move. Because he's been stationary for so long, I'm thinking, there's no way he's not gonna move. He's going to anytime now, except nope. He never fucking moved. Just sitting there like a dick, scaring the shit out of me. Whatever. On to night 3. With night 3 coming along, so does another threat we get to talk about. And in all honesty, this threat doesn't make the game much harder, but Marcus 100% does. The threat introduced on this night is once again someone I don't know the name of, so I'm going to be calling him Vent Guy. And I'm guessing purely by saying his name, you can already guess what this guy is going to do. That's right, the exact same thing as Marcus. No, I'm not kidding. Vent Guy will attack your vents, and he actually has two different means of attacking you. The first will have him do exactly what Green Man does. He'll go through vent 1 and show up outside of your office. When he does, all you have to do is go to the shock menu on your maintenance panel and shock the vent. His second form of attack will have him attack the vent directly above your head, or vent 2. When you see him in this vent, for some reason, you don't shock the vent. This time around, you have to give him the Withered Foxy treatment and flash your light at him several times to make him go away. Turns out he's epileptic, and there's nothing I enjoy more than giving epileptic people seizures. Also, quick side tangent, I feel like it'd be hard to drive with epilepsy. And who knows, maybe you can't. There have been times where I'm driving on the highway, and on the sides of the road they have the little bumper things to prevent people from flying off the road, but these little bumper things have several support beams holding them in the ground, so when you're driving during the sunset, oftentimes the sun will line up with those fucking support beams and proceed to strobe me for the next 6 miles on the fucking road. Anyways, let's keep talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's game, shall we? Again, Vent Guy isn't really that big of an issue. Who is a fucking issue, however, is Marcus. At first, I thought Marcus was moving at the speed of fucking sound because there would be several, and I do mean several instances where I noticed Marcus leaves camera 1, so I shocked the hallway. Then moments later, I get killed by Marcus. At first, I thought this meant Marcus turned into a fucking bullet train, but no. I think I understand what's happening here. I'm pretty sure there's a window of time between Marcus leaving camera 1 and actually showing up outside of your office. And I think I was shocking the hallway during that window of time, which meant when Marcus actually did get to my hallway, I was never actually able to shock him, and I obviously couldn't see him on the cameras. I think this is a very, very bad mechanic. If this is truly how Marcus works, if Marcus can't be seen when he's in the hallway and he makes no sound cues to indicate he's entered the hallway, and you have a window of time between him disappearing off of all of the cameras and reaching the hallway, and your shock cooldown is very long, this brings up a very obvious problem of literally never being able to time Marcus properly and consistently. What needs to happen is when Marcus leaves camera 1, that means he is instantly in your hallway. What ended up happening constantly during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, is I would see Marcus leave camera 1, so I'd shock the hallway. Then I'd check camera 4 to see if he'd been reset. When I saw he hadn't, I'd rush back to the maintenance panel and spam the shock button, which was always still charging at this point. Shock the hallway a second time, and only then would I see that Marcus would reset. This is very bad. One of the only flaws I've noticed with this game so far. This is not fun. This is not challenging. This is not innovative. This is just bad game design. And if the devs are looking for anything to change about this game, this is 100% the thing to change. But with that, we can move on to night 4. All right, recording Dxtr here. Giving a little note as I'm reading this script and remembering that I wrote this. Marcus, I was told that Marcus, after he is in camera 1 and he disappears, he doesn't go to the hallway. He actually goes to camera 3 after camera 1. However, thinking about that doesn't make sense because quite literally, every time I shocked the hallway and then shocked it a second time, Marcus was reset. So you're telling me that if that's true, what I just said right now, that he goes to camera 3 after camera 1, camera 3 is his final camera, you're telling me that every single feasible time Marcus left camera 1 and I shocked twice, he made a movement opportunity to camera 3 and then my hallway. He made that every time in that window of time without fail. I don't believe that. I have trouble believing that. I think what I wrote originally is correct, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Guys, I've got some great news for you. After a long time of waiting, the Skags plushie is finally live. I've been working with Makeshift to make the perfect Skags plushie possible, and I think he's turned out perfect. We obviously talk a lot about Five Nights at Freddy's on this channel, so I figured it'd be great to make him in the exact style as the FNAF plushies, which means he'll easily be able to sit on your desk or shelf without falling over. You guys made this possible. I could have never done this without you. To everyone who supported the petition a few months back, thank you guys so much. But you guys have to be fast, as Skags is only around for a limited time. Once this campaign is over, he'll be gone forever, so you really don't want to miss out. This is hands down the coolest thing that has ever happened to me as a YouTuber, and I never thought 2 years ago when I started this channel that it would get me this far in life. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate every single one of you. You guys have made my dreams come true, and this is one small way I can celebrate that. So go get yourself a Skaggs plushie before time runs out. He's the perfect gift for anyone who likes stuffed animals, and I guarantee if you put this guy in your bed, the Huzz are gonna flock to you like birds. So that's always a plus too. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and thank you to Makeship for making this plushie with me and putting up with my constant tweaks to make sure that Skaggs is as perfect as he is. Sorry for interrupting. Let's get back to the video. Night 4 rolls around, and with it, another threat is introduced. Once again, the name of this character is currently unknown to me, so I'm going to be calling him Screen Guy. Obviously, as I'm sure you could have already seen, there are 6 screens on our desk, and so far we've only ever used one of them. Well, Screen Guy is here to change that. Throughout the night, at random, he has a chance to appear on any of the non-camera screens. He'll make a subtle sound cue when he appears, and all you have to do is click the monitor he occupies and he'll go away. Incredibly basic character, not really much to worry about. Something about this night I want to mention is 2 things that I learned. The first being that Green Man's name is Shut. I personally prefer Green Man if I'm being honest. The second thing I learned while playing Night 4 is that as long as your maintenance panel is down, no matter which of the 2 screens you have selected, you will still do your task. Okay, let's just pump this up to 40. And now we'll shock. Oh wait, it's still going. Well, isn't that just the best thing you've ever seen in your life? I didn't know it was gonna do all that now. Which means if I notice Marcus has left, now that I know I basically have to shock him twice to properly time it, I can start on my task, flip to the shock panel, and while I take a billion years shocking him twice, the task I selected will still be performed the entire time. I'm sure this was probably obvious to most people, but shut up, I just figured it out now. Anyways, on to Night 5 since there wasn't a whole lot to go over this time. Once again, Night 5 introduces nothing new and just goes about being a harder version of Night 4. While a little boring, there's nothing wrong with that. It is the first game in the series after all. However, there is something interesting to talk about. But before I talk about it, I want to mention the names of the characters I've failed to mention so far. Vent Guy's name is officially Dahomey. Yes, I'm serious. What a silly name. I personally prefer Vent Guy, I'm not gonna lie. And then the weird monitor guy's name is officially Shadow Marcus, which, by the way, I didn't mention this. If you ever don't click his monitor in time, he'll just appear behind you and disable your maintenance panel, ensuring that you will die. Anyways, on to that interesting thing I mentioned about 20 seconds ago. After completing Night 5, the game doesn't just end like I expected it to. Instead, we get this cutscene. But there we go. After completing Night 5, we get a sneak peek at possibly our antagonist, and Five Nights at Marcus comes to a close. But that's not before we're able to go into the extras menu and read a little bit about the characters. We see that Marcus was never finished being built, which is obviously why he has no legs. Shut was originally designed to be so tall for intimidation, as he was going to be a security robot, but he soon turned hostile. Dahomey goes into your vents because he's so small, and he was the last robot made before the company had to hand over all of their robots for investigation, which I find interesting because they're not being investigated in this game. They're just sitting in a building. And finally, the company has given no word as to what Shadow Marcus even is, so yeah, that doesn't sound weird and suspicious at all. So yeah, that's all Five Nights at Marcus has to offer. But of course, judging by the length of this video, you guys know we've got a lot more to talk about. And that's because this series actually has 2 additional games packed full of content. So let's move on to Five Nights at Marcus 2. Five Nights at Marcus 2, while not a remaster, don't let that fool you, as while graphically it may not look as good as the first game, mechanic-wise, I think it is pretty solid. And this game is much more stressful than the first. So let's get right into Night 1, because just like in the first game, there's no weird minigames. Night 1 drops us right into the office and really shows us how much more challenging this game is going to be. To start, let's talk about the tools at our disposal. Of course, we have our camera system, nothing special, and just like the last last game, we're able to turn around to do our tasks, but we'll talk about what those tasks are in a bit because they are much more interesting than the first. Sticking to the front of our office, we have a flashlight that we can use to flash the large window in front of us. You'll notice there's 3 separate areas of this window you can flash. You'll also notice that this flashlight drains incredibly quickly, like really fast. So what do we do about that? While looking at the front of the office, you can flip down your maintenance panel in order to repair things or shock things. If your flashlight goes dead, simply repair it and it'll fill right back up. Nothing crazy. Now, let's move on to talking about the task-based system this game has, and why it's much more stressful than the first. To start, this time around, we're not just pressing a button and playing the waiting game. This time, it's actually something we have to pay attention to. We will receive several shipping containers throughout the night. When they arrive, we must scan them, which takes a while, and when they're scanned, we'll get some information about them on the left side of the screen. The information predetermined on the right side of the screen is what should be inside of the shipping container. If both sides match, we accept it. If they don't, we deny it. Every time we do this successfully, we gain a point, and if we fuck up 5 times, we lose. Fucking up is pretty hard, but once these nights start to get more and more stressful, it will become apparent how messing this up could be easy. Do this 12 times and the night is complete. But of course, we all know it's not just that simple, as of course we do have other threats to deal with at the same time. Just like in the first game, Marcus himself is the only character introduced on night 1, and he is very simple. Even more simple than in the first game. However, he does drain a precious resource far more than any other character does. Marcus will move through the cameras to get to your window. Luckily, this time you'll actually be able to see him when he's at it. And when he is, all you have to do is spam your flashlight at him and he'll reset. But of course, with the flashlight draining so quickly, dealing with Marcus is not something you're going to want to be doing very often, as repairing the flashlight can take a hefty amount of time when you really don't have it. Plus, we'll need to use that flashlight to deal with the other threats that get introduced later, but for now, Marcus is all we have, so beating this night should be easy and we can move on to night 2. Night 2 honestly does way more than I expected it to, and is where I learned that this game has quite a few more characters than the first. So let's not waste any time and talk about the first threat this night introduces, Shut. Returning from the first game, like Marcus, Shut plays a role in introducing a very important mechanic into the game, that being your shock system. Inside of your maintenance panel where you repair your flashlight, you'll notice a shock button at the bottom. Switching to the shock screen, you'll see you can shock either the vent or the office. Shut will slowly make his way to your office, and fun fact, whenever a character reaches camera 5, which is the camera right before they show up in your window, they will actually make a sound cue as you'll be able to hear them walking, which is very nice. When Shut shows up at your window, shock your office and he'll go away, wherein you'll then have to wait for the office shock to recharge. Not so bad. Hopefully we just don't get a fuck ton more characters that also require us to shock the office. The next threat introduced on this night goes by the name of Him. Stupid name, I know, but let's just roll with it, alright? Him will make his way to your office and show up at your window. When he does, all you have to do is shock the office and he'll leave. Uh-oh. Something tells me this game is about to get super repetitive and mind-numbing and luck-based. But those are the only new threats this night introduces. But before we move on to night 3, there's one more mechanic I need to mention now that we've brought up shocking. You only have 5 shocks. When you run out, you'll need to repair your shock to refill it. You usually have plenty of time to do this at this point of the game, but I get the funny feeling it's going to get a lot more difficult as we progress. But with that out of the way, we can move on to night 3. Night 3 only adds one new threat, and the way the game made him sound made me think he was going to be interesting.
What are the animatronics? Take a shortcut through the vents to your office. Make sure you flash.
What? 17! But I was sorely mistaken. This night introduces Vent Boy again. I already forgot his name, and I don't feel like checking again because I remember that it was something really stupid. Vent Boy does pretty much the exact same thing that he does in the first game, yet they somehow managed to make him more boring. Vent Boy obviously travels through your vents. When he makes it to your window, you'll see him directly in front of you. Unlike the original, where you have to shock the vent, this time around, you just treat him like Marcus and flash him a bunch of times until he leaves. Very boring. I don't know why they didn't make him a vent shot character. That just makes sense. It's also at this point of the video where I want to mention a pretty glaring flaw that this game has, and I'm sure you might have already caught on. There is so far no reason to ever check your cameras throughout this game, and in fact, even the sound cues aren't necessary, as you could pretty easily beat what we've talked about so far with the game muted. Here's what the strategy boils down to right now. Start the night and immediately start working on tasks. Every time you send a container, turn around and very quickly flash the 3 sections of the window to waste as little flashlight power as possible. If you don't see anyone, do your next task. If you do see someone, deal with them. If it's a shock character, shock them and then repair your flashlight before turning around and working on the next container. The only time you won't repair your light here is if you need to repair your shock instead. Repeat this 17 times for night 3 and you have it completed. Is this night hard? No. Do all of the characters make you feel intimidated? No. Why? Because even though we have 4 characters active at this point, there are still only 2 mechanics to deal with all of them, as this game continues to dive into the FNAF 2 repetition problem. But let's hold out some hope and move on to night 4. Night 4 is nothing special. No, literally, quite literally nothing new is added on this night at all. And for some reason, during my playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black, I actually got attacked far less times than I did on night 3, which I thought was really weird. The only thing that actually changes on this night is how many cargo containers you have, which on this night was 18. Boring stuff. Let's move on to night 5 where something interesting actually does happen. Night 5 does something different, thankfully, that being introducing one new threat that actually really changes something about the gameplay loop, which this game 100% needed. This new character is Vent Boy 2.0, and I'm calling him that because, once again, I forgot his fucking name. Vent Boy 2.0 adds something from the first game that I wasn't a super huge fan of. As I'm sure you could have guessed by his name, he travels through the vents, except unlike Dahomey, he doesn't drop down in front of you for you to flash. He works exactly how Marcus does from the first game. He'll travel through your vent cameras. Once you see him disappear from them, you know he's about to attack. During this time, all you have to do is shock the vent and he'll reset. While not a hard mechanic by itself, it does hurt my dick that I actually have to try to beat this game now. Although it is good that at least now finally on night 5, we have a reason to use the camera. Too bad we only get one night with him, as night 5 is the final night Five Nights at Marcus 2 has to offer. However, we still have one last game to talk about, and it's not called Five Nights at Marcus 3. I actually didn't even know that the next game we'll be talking about was even a part of this series, that game in question being Far From Land. So let's jump right into that. Far From Land starts in a very interesting way. Unlike both of the Five Nights at Marcus games, Far From Land actually has something other than just night sections, as this game opens to a cutscene about cargo ships that work for Celadon, and go figure, we play as the person driving this cargo ship. And oddly enough, we're referred to as Marcus by the phone guy. Hey, recording Dxtr once again. No, we fucking aren't. We're not called Marcus. I don't know why I fucking wrote that. We're called Malcolm. Guess I'm retarded. Anyways, let's continue. Speaking of the phone guy, he's nothing special on our first voyage in the game. He tells us how to deal with problems, blah, blah, blah. Let me do that for you guys. To start, once again, like the other games, Far From Land is a task-based completion system, which I really like. And this game's task is by far the most interesting and engaging so far. We have to literally just drive the fucking ship. That's the task. While we're piloting the ship, we will be able to see several icebergs in front of us. We will have to steer the ship away from these to avoid crashes. And once we reach a certain point, which is marked on a monitor in front of us, the voyage will be complete. Of course, it's not just as easy as that. We also have a maintenance room to keep track of. The ship we're on is very old and is prone to breaking down. We can check the ship's integrity with one of our monitors, and once it gets too low, the ship will stop moving and sirens will start to blare. At this time, we must go back to the maintenance room and fix one of a few busted pipes at random. Don't worry about the massive scary vent in front of us. We'll talk about that later. The only other thing for us to talk about on this night is the one threat this game introduces. I'm assuming this character is Shut, just given the fact how large this character really is. On one of our monitors in front of us, we can see a layout of the ship. Unlike every other game so far, we can't actually check the cameras, which is really a good thing since the last 2 games really didn't have any reason to. Every time a character moves, we will get a signal on this monitor to show us exactly where they are. Obviously, Shut is the only character active on this night, so he's all we have to talk about. Shut, being the most basic of the characters, does the most basic thing. He will wander around the ship until he reaches the hallway directly behind you. You'll be able to hear him when he arrives. Turning around will show him inside of the hallway, but you don't have to do anything at this point. The next time Shut moves, he will be right up next to you, so you need to make sure you're facing the hallway when this happens. As he walks up to you, you'll need to hold your breath so he thinks you're not alive or something. He'll check you out, make sure you're a robot or something, and then he'll turn around and leave, and you can go back to driving the ship. Very simple character, but I do think him getting so close to you is super cool. But that's all the first voyage has to offer. But good news for us, in this game, there's actually something to do after each night instead of just moving on to the next. We have the first post-voyage section where we need to fix up our old bum-ass ship. During this section, we're in an area that's dark as fuck. We're equipped with a flashlight and a checklist. We'll have to find several jerry cans around the map, fix several pipes, shut off the power, and find and replace the fuse of the ship's generator. Then this night will truly be over. Of course, it's not just as simple as that, as there is a threat lurking around. Do I know the name of this character? Just like most other characters introduced in this series, no. But I'm sure I'll find out the more that I play. For now, I'm going to call this character the Puppet because its drawing kinda looks like a discount marionette. The puppet will randomly wander around the ship as we're doing our tasks. This place is dark as fuck, and using our flashlight is essential. Every time we move to a new location, we'll have to pause and listen for the puppet's breathing. Even though it's a fucking robot, it still is loud. When we hear it, we must hold our breath until it leaves, wherein we can then continue our tasks. Very simple overall, but I do think it's really cool they're adding something to do after the main night sections. With that, we can move on to Voyage 2. Voyage 2 is much the same as the first. We've got a slightly longer distance to go and a new threat to talk about. This one being a lot scarier than the last. I want you to take a solid guess whether or not I know the name of this character. Do you think I do? What's that? You think I know the name of this character? Well, you haven't been watching this video then because I have no fucking idea what this thing is called, so I'm gonna be calling him Water Guy. Hey, recording Dxtr here, once again, I'm back. Apparently this is fucking Marcus. Does it look like Marcus? No, but it's Marcus. Water Guy uses a mechanic that has to do with water, if you couldn't have guessed based on how I named him. One of the monitors on the panel in front of us shows off our water integrity. This is basically just explaining how much water the ship is currently storing. Pulling the lever next to it will increase how much water is stored if it ever decreases. But that brings up the question of how it decreases. Well, that's where Water Guy comes into play. Just like Shut, he will make his way to where we are. However, he uses a different entrance. If you turn to where Shut attacks and then turn left, you'll see a new door. This door has no light and there's no way to see into the doorway. I'm sure you can see where this might be going. And you'd be right. You will not be able to see Water Guy when he's in the door. And with no cameras, how are you supposed to track him? Well, that's where that trusty motion detector comes into play. When you see that he's near the entrance, quickly whip around to that doorway and pull a yellow lever that releases a sprinkler system into the doorway for some reason. Not really sure why this is here, but it is. When you do, you'll see Water Guy spark, since you know he's a robot and they don't really fuck with water and such, and then he'll reset. Nothing crazy, but he is for sure going to be one of the more annoying threats throughout this playthrough. So now, let's move on to the post-Voyage 2 section. Not even really sure why I'm talking about this section. It's the exact same as the last one, except the objects are placed randomly somewhere else, and it seems that whatever monster is down here is more aggressive. Overall, super simple. It's time to move on to Voyage 3. Voyage 3 is longer than Voyage 2. This is going to be a pattern that repeats itself. Also offered on this voyage is yet another threat for us to worry about, that being Dahomey. A character I surprisingly remembered the name of, but that's only because it's so fucking stupid. Dahomey, like he is in the other games, is a vent character. And where is the only vent on the ship we can access? That's right, the maintenance room. Luckily, we can track him on the motion detector like the other characters, and when we see him in the vent, all we have to do is whip over to it and hold our flashlight on him until he goes away. Very easy, but it is another character to drag us away from the task that continues to get longer and longer each night, but that's all this voyage adds. Moving on to the post-voyage section, which is actually something different this time. Instead of inspecting the top deck, this time we're inspecting the bottom deck. In it, we have another plethora of tasks, such as fixing leaky pipes, replacing fire extinguishers, rearranging pipes, and finally refueling the ship. All of these tasks are pretty simple. However, there is one threat looming over our heads, quite literally the entire time. That being the puppet-looking thing again. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This is a different fucking puppet. I don't know its name, but it's a different one. Occasionally, while we're walking around the lower deck, he'll drop down from a vent in the ceiling. Using a wrench we acquire on this night to complete our tasks, we have to whack the shit out of him to make him jump back into the vents. We only have a certain amount of stamina, and since we need to swing the wrench to fix leaky pipes, we have to balance how much we're swinging at once. Once we get into the final room, all we do is refuel the ship and we're ready to move on to the next voyage. However, before we do that, I want to talk about something stupid that this game has. Quite a few months back, I was actually playing this game on my second channel, Dxtr Black, but I stopped on episode 3 because this post-voyage section of the game was bugged. I said I'd come back to the game after it was fixed. What would happen is that the game would literally just freeze when doing certain things, and I was even able to still replicate it now, which happened in my newest playthrough of the game. What? See, look, I already broke the game. Turns out this bug is all tied to the FPS of the game. If you use the highest FPS to 40 like I do, not only can this bug occur, but it'll also fuck up your camera movement 6 ways to Sunday, making you whip around so fast it gives you whiplash. This is the same problem I was having all those months ago. So, if you turn your FPS down to 60, not only will it fix the whole whiplash problem for some reason, it will also completely fix the freezing bug I had. I have no idea whatsoever how FPS has to play into any of this, and this is not the first game I've played with this weird problem. Weirdly enough, the Poppy Playtime games also have bugs on higher frame rates as well, the main one being that the grab pack will pull you upwards far fucking slower on higher FPS. Super weird, but I needed to point it out. On to voyage number 4, which is entirely new territory for me once again, and with this voyage comes one of the scariest threats yet. Lore-wise, not really gameplay-wise, I'm gonna be honest with you. During the phone call, it gets intercepted by a guy named Mason. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to know who Mason is at this time, but I'm gonna be so honest, I have no idea who the fuck Mason is, and I really can't be fucked to figure it out. Mason talks about how this new threat, who he calls the Kraken, has gotten on the ship and that it's very dangerous. Apparently, this robot is what the company doesn't want anyone knowing about, and we're completely alone on this massive ship with it. The Kraken's mechanic is pretty interesting, but I think it could have been done a lot better. The Kraken can be seen on the front of the ship through your window while you're driving. By holding shift, you can cause the horn of the ship to go off. Whenever you see the Kraken, blow the horn like the hose do and he'll go away. When your horn integrity runs out, all you have to do is go to the maintenance room and fix a pipe, which will then fix your horn. I don't really know how that makes any sense, but don't question it. That's just what we have to do. The Kraken does have another mechanic, although I personally never saw it. The Kraken has a chance to enter your maintenance room. If you ever see him in there, just turn around and that's literally it. Hey, recording Dxtr again. This isn't the Kraken that does this in the maintenance room. It's another fucking character I don't know the name of, but yeah, no, he was just never mentioned by a phone guy. It's just fucked me, I guess. Overall, I think the Kraken could be a cool mechanic. He kind of hides like he knows you're looking for him, but he always hides in the same spot. I think it would be a lot cooler and a lot more interesting if the Kraken had several hiding spots throughout the front of the ship that he'd hide in at random. Doing this would not only make the gameplay loop more interesting, but also keep the player on their toes throughout the entire voyage. Now, moving on to the post-voyage section. Spoiler alert, it's exactly the same as the last one. Doing the same tasks, albeit one of the puzzles is different, but still very simple, and the puppet thing is still trying to turn our guts into soup. Refill the tank at the end of this section of the voyage, and it is over, and we can move on to the 5th voyage. Voyage 5 adds nothing new to the gameplay loop, just being a harder version of Voyage 4, and a lot harder, that is. The characters really ramp up their AI on this night and get a lot more aggressive, which is an oddly nice change of pace. What really gets interesting is this post-voyage cutscene.
Why are you doing this? You think you can just take us away and destroy us and leave no trace of us left? I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. You have made a mistake doing this, and you know that. Malcolm, I know everything about you. You are just like everyone else I've killed. Weak. Maybe I know why you are even here to begin with. Is it because of your brother? I know you're hurt, and I know you want to take revenge. But you know deep down that you'll never defeat me. Never come back here. Never tell anyone about this. Or else, you will have to face me.
And with that, we're surprisingly thrown into a sixth voyage. A sixth night is something that none of the other games have had so far, so this actually makes me very surprised. And turns out this final voyage is a boss fight with the Kraken, which is the name of the robot we just saw in the cutscene. Not actually the robot I was calling the Kraken earlier. I'm sure you could have guessed from this whole video, but I don't think the series is very good at explaining names. The Kraken obviously plays the role of all of the characters we've seen on the voyages so far, with a small twist when he plays as Shut and Dahomey. In both cases, when dealing with him, he activates a rat from Five Nights at Candy's 3 mechanic, where you have to track his head while he moves around. Awesome change of pace. I love that they added this little extra piece of detail, really ties everything together. The dude that sits outside of your front window, and Scrap, which is the name of the character that I thought was the Kraken that sat in your maintenance room, had a chance to do it, and you turn around, it's that guy, his name is Scrap. I found this out only because of the fucking settings at the end of the game, because they never say his fucking name in the game. It's just stupid as fuck. But that's really it. Deal with all of the characters and try to avoid the fact that the Kraken killed a guy and attached his rib cage and head to his own fucked up robot body. Yeah, tell me that's not the most fucked up shit you've ever heard in your life. After completing the voyage, we get one last cutscene where we seemingly willingly drive the ship right into a giant rock to sink the entire thing and destroy ourselves, along with the murder robots that are inside of it. Honestly, a very good decision in my opinion. Really taking one for the team there, Malcolm. I appreciate it, G. But with that, everything is destroyed. We unlock the extras where I learned Dahomey wasn't even Dahomey the entire time I've been calling him the wrong fucking name, and that there are like 7 human characters that have a paragraph of text beneath them, all characters I'm supposed to be familiar with. Spoiler alert, I am not, so I'm just gonna pretend like I never opened the extras menu, and I'll just say that Five Nights at Marcus series comes to a close. Overall, I really think that this is a great series. I think it started off pretty rocky, but overall it's clear you can see a real improvement from one game to another, especially with how amazing Far From Land is. Even though it has one of the stupidest bugs I've ever seen. I just really hate how lore-wise, I literally picked up none of it. Literally 0 pieces throughout my whole playthrough, which you can see over on my second channel, Dxtr Black.
What's the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game ever made? I think there's a few answers that could really give a valid argument. Maybe you think it's One Night at Flumpty's. Maybe you think Pop Goes. Or maybe... maybe you're super wrong and think Five Nights at Candy's 2. God, I fucking hate that stupid game so much. It's so goddamn boring and repetitive. I'd rather stick my dick in a toaster than play it. But hey, that's probably a video for another day. I should mention that the title of this video says the best FNAF fan game, but what that really means is from a gameplay standpoint. How fun is it to actually play? Maybe after hearing that, your answer has changed. The game we'll be covering in this video is, in my opinion, the best FNAF fan game from a gameplay standpoint that has ever been made, The Joy of Creation, Storyborn. Fun fact, Markiplier also agrees with me on this point.
I'm not even lying about that. This was amazing. This is by far the best Five Nights at Freddy's fan game ever made, just from a gameplay standpoint. And I'm only speaking from a gameplay standpoint.
So yeah, Markiplier and I are basically best friends. Mark, if you're watching, best friend, leave a comment that just says, "Peep." That way everyone will know that we are canonically best friends. Thanks, my boy. Before we begin, I'd like to greatly apologize for my lack of videos in the last 2, probably 3 weeks as of the time of this going up. I just got done moving to a new city and starting my new full-time job, so I have not had any free time. But I'm finally back in the groove, and I have a set work schedule that won't change, so expect uploads to be more frequent now. I plan on releasing 1 video a week on the White channel. Don't quote me on that, but I will definitely try my best to keep it up. Also, big news, we have a community Discord server now. Hooray! A while back I asked you guys in a community post if you wanted a Discord server, and the majority of you said yes. So I hunkered down and actually got one created. It probably isn't the best, but with your guys' suggestions, I'm sure we can make it a place where we all want to hang out and chat with each other. You can join using the link in the description. In the last video, I asked you all what your favorite monster from the web of cogs and oil was. My favorite comment was this one by Ads the Flareon. They chose the corpse, and while my favorite is the Dxtr, I really like the thought process behind this answer. Flareon says that they're so desensitized to animatronics that the machine isn't even on the table for favorite. They go on to say how out of place the corpse feels and how that alone makes it the creepiest. Jesus, would he just get to the topic of the video already? Yap, that's all this bozo does. Listen, I hear you. You don't need to be a dick. Let's get to the video. The Joy of Creation story mode is, as I'm sure you already know, not the first game in the Joy of Creation series, but let's all be honest with each other, it's easily the first one that's actually enjoyable to play. The original Joy of Creation might actually be the most boring experience of all time. It consisted of you sitting in a chair, spinning in a circle, and flashing your flashlight at everything you see for an infinite amount of time. That's right, there wasn't even a time system. Story mode, however, is absolutely amazing, so let's get into it. The game opens with a cutscene. We play as an adult named Nick Cawthon. Recognize that last name? Well, you should, and don't worry, I'll be talking about it in a bit. Nick walks up to an old house in the middle of the woods and recounts how long it's been since he's last been there, insinuating that something terrible happened inside before. We get a flashback detailing the start of what happened, and we're shifted into the point of view of a new character named Michael. Michael wakes up in a basement. We find out it is in fact not Michael's basement, and is instead Scott Cawthon's? What the fuck? Regardless, Scott asks Michael what he's doing in their house. Michael states that he doesn't know, and a child version of Nick convinces Scott and Val, who is Scott's wife, to let Michael stay the night at their house. Absolutely, positively, possibly one of the worst plays I've ever witnessed in my whole entire life. You found a guy in your basement, talked to him for 3 minutes, got a solid 0 answers from him, and allowed him to stay in your house overnight while your wife and child are inside. Absolutely brilliant. This is when we enter the first, what the game calls, memories. I can't call them nights since all of the challenges we will play through actually happen at pretty much the exact same time. For Memory 1, we are in a bedroom in a crib, where we play as Nick again, this time as a child. We wake up in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm, and Michael starts talking through Nick's baby monitor, effectively acting as the phone guy of this memory. Michael explains to Nick that there are monsters trying to get him, and explains in detail how to fend them all off, explaining that at 6 a.m., the monsters will all go away, and we're thrown into the first challenge. Unlike in most FNAF games where you slowly are introduced to each animatronic throughout the nights, adding more and more stress as it goes on, Story Mode opts to do something different. Story Mode throws essentially every animatronic on your nuts all at once. This memory has Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in it. I'll now go over all of their mechanics. Before I dive into the character mechanics, I'll start by mentioning the lamp. Behind you there is a lamp. By turning it on, you calm yourself down. Having the lamp off for too long will lead to you having intense visual and auditory hallucinations before inevitably losing the run. Now, I'll start with Chica since she's by far the easiest to deal with. Chica comes from your closet. There will be a noticeable audio cue when she opens the closet door. When she does, you'll have to turn off your lamp and wait for her to go back into the closet. Personally, I didn't know Chica swang that way, but I think it's pretty sick. Next, I'll go over Bonnie. Bonnie comes from your bedroom door. He will make a notable audio cue like Chica. He will knock on the door 3 times. When you hear this, you'll need to be quick, because you only have so long to react. When you hear the knocks, you'll have to quickly shut your lamp off and lay down in your crib. I should mention that laying down is a mechanic, and if you lay down while Chica's in your room, she'll kill you. After laying down in bed, Bonnie will slam your door open, look around, and then leave the room again, which tells you that it's safe to get back up and turn your lamp back on. Bonnie has this really weird mechanic. I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's intended. However, a lot of the time, I'd say about 50% at least, when you hear Bonnie knock, he'll never end up coming into the room, which caused me on multiple occasions to shut the lamp off and lay down, only for the sound of Bonnie coming into the room to never play, meaning I end up laying down for way longer than I should, which pretty obviously fucks me over. Next, we'll talk about Freddy. Freddy appears at the window next to your crib. When he does, all you need to do is close the curtains to prevent him from seeing you. After a few moments, you'll hear a quiet sound cue letting you know he's left, and it's free to open your curtains again. But what if you hear Bonnie knocking or Chica coming in while you're holding off Freddy? Well, I'll tell you, you'll just get bread in the butt. So when you shart Bonnie's jizz on the toilet after being bread in the butt, we can talk about Foxy. Oh my god, Foxy. Foxy is under your bed like your weird uncle. Occasionally, you'll hear him scratching his hook on your bedpost. Well, at least, that's what Michael says that he's doing. I personally subscribe to the belief that he's scratching his hook on his big fat stupid balls. When you hear him doing this, you know that he will soon be attacking. A while after the sound cue, you will be able to see Foxy's hook on the back of your bed. When you do, you know you don't have much time left until he attacks, so quickly turn off your lamp, lay down, and close your eyes. Oh yeah, forgot to mention you can close your eyes while laying down. It's just used for Foxy, which is why I didn't say anything. Repeat this ass cycle enough times and congrats, you've beaten the first memory. Only 4 more left to go. The second memory takes place in the living room of the house. In this memory, you play as Scott's wife, Val. We start with a cutscene where Scott tells Val that he's going to make sure Nick is okay, since both of them are pretty uncomfortable with Michael staying in the house, which bodes the question, why the fuck did you even let him in? Regardless, Scott leaves and Val is left alone. This game mode is honestly probably my favorite. I personally feel it is the most terrifying out of the rest. In this memory, rather than being confined to one area like normal FNAF games, you're freely able to move around. Just like in the last memory, you have to survive until 6 AM against all 4 main animatronics. Michael tells us that we're fucked and to just hide. Thanks, Michael. Very helpful. Since Michael was no fucking help at all, allow me to explain what it is you're supposed to do on this night. Let's start with Foxy and Freddy. These two act identical to one another. Each come down the hallway on one side of the living room. You can check how far away they are by turning the TV on while watching their cameras. Yeah, for some reason Foxy and Freddy have cameras mounted on their faces or something. I'm not really sure, but we don't question it. You can stall one of them at a time by holding down a button. Somehow. I don't really know, guys. I really like this memory, but this part actually makes no sense. Please bear with me. Get it? Bear. Like Freddy. Like Freddy, because Freddy's like Freddy Fazbear. Like he's a bear. Bear with me. Do you get it, guys? Guys, do you get because he's like a bear? You'll notice that Foxy and Freddy both move at the same speed. So if you don't begin stalling one of them, they will reach your room at the same time, which will mean immediate death for you. How do you keep them out? I hear you asking. Well, guess what? You don't. That's right. The animatronics in this night will literally enter the room you are in and try and find you, so you'll need to hide from them when they open the door. The way you hide from Foxy and Freddy is by hiding right next to the door that they'll be opening. The only problem with this is that when you're standing next to one door, you're right in the line of sight for the other, meaning that if you're hiding from Freddy and Foxy opens the door, he'll see you and promptly kill you. This is why stalling one of them is super important, as you'll be able to control and create a pattern at which they will come to the doors. Now let's talk about Bonnie. Along with the 2 doors that Foxy and Freddy come from, there are also double doors to the living room as well. I really have no idea why there are so many entrances to the living room. This house is a fucking maze. Bonnie doesn't have a camera, so you can't watch him directly. Instead, you'll have to walk over to the double doors and look through the keyhole to see how close he is. Once he gets close enough that you'll be able to smell the grease on his fuzzy nutsack, you just have to hide on either side of the double door and wait for Bonnie to arrive and close the door. Which brings yet another issue. When you're hiding from Bonnie, whichever side of the door you're on will leave you vulnerable to either Freddy or Foxy, so you'll really have to balance and know where Foxy and Freddy are at all times. It's the reason why I really like this memory. I really like micromanagement in games that are both hard but fair. This is why I think 1020 mode in FNAF 2 is such bullshit, because it's actually just not fair, especially Toy Bonnie. Toy Bonnie is the reason why it took me 14 hours to complete that stupid fucking mode. If you want me to make a video talking in detail about why I hate that mode specifically, let me know in the comments below. With Bonnie, Freddy, and Foxy being gone over, the only character left to talk about is Chica. Chica is easily the weakest character in this night, very similar to last night. Chica will randomly appear next to one of the windows in the living room. You'll be able to tell because she starts growling? What? She's a fucking chicken. Why would she growl? Whatever, that doesn't matter. When she does, you'll have to get up from the couch. I should have probably mentioned that when you look at the TV to check on Freddy and Foxy, you have to sit down on the couch. I didn't think it was important when I was writing that part of the script, but I just remembered while writing this part, and I'm honestly way too lazy to go back and edit that part of the video to add one sentence. So instead, I opted to add in a whole nother section just to explain why I didn't explain that part of the game before, arguably padding for runtime, even though this video would have been well over 15 minutes without it. Hopefully you enjoyed this section of Dxtr Over Explains. Anyway, when you hear Chica growling, you'll have to stand up from the couch and not move until you hear the growling stop. Once you do, you're free to move again. If you move, Chica will jump scare you, which actually doesn't kill you until the final hour. Instead, it will just send you back to the couch and you won't be able to check the cameras for a while. Chica is easily the weakest part of this memory, as previously stated. She just feels so shallow compared to the other three. I know the other three all do the exact same thing, but they do so in a way that feels interesting. They do so in unison, as even though they do the same thing, they all work together in a way that keeps up the intensity all night. Chica just feels so out of place. After 6 a.m., this memory is over and we can move on to the next one. The next memory takes place in the office where you play as Scott Cawthon himself. This memory starts with Scott going to check on Nick, but of course, we both know what Nick and Val are going through at the moment. Now it's Scott's turn. Scott sees Freddy and starts running. I'm talking haul assin'. His house starts going batshit crazy and Scott hides in his office. He listens to a tape he left himself on how to defeat the animatronics that he made. I try to wrap my head around this section and the lore implications behind why he was leaving himself recordings, but I'm honestly too tired and way more focused on the gameplay in this game. This night is okay, I guess. It's interesting at the least, and it's very clearly just a large improvement from the first Joy of Creation game. Instead of just spinning in a circle and flashing your light when you find animatronics, you actually instead have to actively search for each animatronic. Let's start with Freddy, since he's both the easiest to deal with and the weirdest overall. Freddy can appear in any of the 4 entrances to the office: the front door, the window, the other window, and the closet. Just like the living room, this memory is free roam, so you'll move around to find the animatronics. When you find Freddy, just flash him with your flashlight and he'll leave. Something very interesting about Freddy that I should note: if left unanswered, Freddy will not kill you throughout the memory. Rather, he acts as a check for the end of it. If you reach 6 a.m. and Freddy is in one of the locations where you could find him, he'll kill you, so you have to make sure that you're really on top of him. I'll talk about Foxy next. On your desk you'll find 3 monitors with cameras! It's been so long, really starting to feel like classic FNAF now. You can look through the cameras on these monitors to find Foxy. When you do, all you have to do is look at him on said cameras. Eventually he'll have a seizure and leave. That's it, pretty simple. But of course, the characters in this game tend to like to work together to make your life more difficult. So that brings me to Bonnie. You can also find Bonnie on the cameras. However, if you see Bonnie on the cameras, make sure not to look at him directly. If you do, he'll punch the shit out of your camera, and you'll no longer be able to look at it for the rest of the memory. Instead, you have to go to the location corresponding to which camera you saw him on, and flash him with your light to make him go away. Now we can talk about Chica, who, unlike the last 2 memories, is actually my favorite. So, there's this giant fucking hole in the wall of your office. I don't know why. You also don't know why, so we won't question it. Chica will try to fit her big fat hairy ass through it slowly, and I do mean slowly. Slow as fuck. So slow. Once she begins to wriggle and writhe in your hole, pause. Once she begins to shake on your hole, pause. Fuck. Once she begins to force herself through your hole, pause. God damn it. You know what? Once she starts to move, you have to get up and find 3 cupcakes hidden around your room. Once you do, she'll leave. These cupcakes can be hidden in drawers, behind posters, and my favorite, in the fucking garbage. Since it may take you a bit of time to find these cupcakes while working on dealing with the other animatronics, if you look at Chica, she will stop moving, giving you more time to look for the cupcakes. Congrats, you little stinker. Once you hit 6 a.m., if Freddy is gone, you're free to move on to Memory 4. Memory 4 is by far the most different and intuitive. I will say, I'm not super sure how it works, so I'm sorry if my explanation is god-awful. In fact, since I'm so nervous I'll be god-awful, I'll let my best friend Markiplier that I mentioned earlier take it away. It's totally gonna be him giving a detailed explanation of this memory, and totally not just me doing a montage edit of his playthrough of this memory with a little bit of commentary. Mark, please don't copyright this, we're best friends.
My name is Markiplier. It's time to go into the basement. Whoa.
Kids! Are any of you there? I found your note. Daddy's here. You must be really scared, but I'm here. I created you. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. How is this happening? What are you? What are you?
Ow! Ah, good. Yes, you put me in the shitty toilet. Oh, good. Thank you for that. Why is this in my basement? Okay, all right then. Am I not gonna get any information about this one? Am I just gonna be left to my own devices? There seems to be a lot of 6 on the walls here. Oh, hi! Hello? Who are you? Yeah, I gotta get through the door. I'm gonna try to sneak over to the bathroom again. Why did I come in here? I didn't need to come in here. Oh! Ah! We come from the fire! I need a cupcake, I need a triangle, I need a swirkly-doo, I need a roll. I don't know what any of those are. Ah! I am in the furnace! There must be like... Oh, what the fuck? Okay, I got a hook. Oh, okay, that's in the furnace now. Well, that's good to know. Okay. No? Alright then. Yee. Okay. Nope, you're still there. Okay, that's a problem. Yeah, I'm right there. Okay, got it. It's gone quiet. What? How does that make sense? You got 4 more to go, and that one took a while. Many shapes, all similar, but different. Oh, it's a code thing, isn't it? Alright. Ah, wait. Okay, the numbers coincide with the number of creatures. 9632. I'm not sure I'm too happy about this, but there we go. So, Wait! Okay! Oh boy. Oh, hi. Okay. Doop. Bee doop. Bee doop. Oh, that's not good. Yeah. Oh god, it's a code. Of course it's over there. I don't know the code for this one. Bonnie with 4. So Freddy had 3. Bonnie 4. Foxy 2. As it leaves Chica with 1, right? Oh, I see. Okay. They're colored. Okay. Chica first. Foxy second. Ooh. What? Okay. Oh. Oh, I can close it behind me. Alrighty then. Got the key. I don't know! Okay, where am I now? Pressing forward because I got nothing better to do and I have a funny feeling I'm gonna die. Okay, keep going. Okay, don't look back. I'm not gonna look back. Why would I look back? Okay, I looked back. I don't know what that did, but I did it. Ah! Ah! That's why you don't stupidly look back. All right, number 2. Oh, that was number 3. Oh, we posed, we played, we stopped, we stared, we screamed. Hi, Golden Freddy. Oh, he remains. Oh. What do I do about this? Oh, hi. What the fuck? Oh, hi. Oh my god. Okay. Holy shit, I saw that movement. Ooh. Oh, no door! Oh, we're in no door land. I got a bad feeling about this. Oh, everything's gone. Excuse me. Hello. Oh, it's his computer. Hey, I made it! Simple tricks of the mind or something more sinister? I don't know. I don't know what that means. Bye-bye.
Wasn't that sick? Thank you, Markiplier. Truly my best friend of all time. Finally, it's time to talk about the final memory of this game, which takes place in the attic. In this memory, you play as Scott again. Michael beats your shit up and ties you to a chair in the attic. He tells you that you're gonna burn and die, because fire in Five Nights at Freddy's is like beans on toast to British people. I don't know if I'd call them people though. Gonna be real, don't really give a shit what Michael has to say. I'm much more concerned about the fire in my goddamn house. In this night, you go up against two endoskeletons, Golden Freddy, and The Creation. Oh my god, Creation! Like the joy of creation, that's the name of the game. Isn't that so cool? Oh, that's so fucking cool. I'm gonna scrub my nuts on a cactus. Anyway, The Creation is the coolest part of this memory, so I'll cover it last. Let's start with the poopy ass Golden Freddy. Unlike other memories, surviving isn't enough to complete it. Instead, you actively have a task to complete. In this case, you have to find Golden Freddy on your cameras 12 times and shock him. Once you do, you finish the memory. Sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Wrong, you fucking idiot, it's actually pretty bullshit. Wanna know why? Because of The Creation, but I'll get to the poopy ass Creation in a minute. First I have to talk about the stupid bumbling endoskeletons. So as I was double checking their mechanics, I learned that the endoskeletons are actually called the Fallen. Pretty cool, I suppose, and typing the Fallen is way easier than typing endoskeletons over and over again, so that's what I'll be calling them. In your cameras, you can switch from the house cameras to the attic cameras. It's on these attic cameras where you can see the Fallen. Inside of the attic, there are two large doors. Each Fallen will come from one of these doors. When you hear their enormous fat asses trampling down the hall, just make sure you close the door on the correct side of your attic to not have your ass blasted. I should also mention that Golden Freddy can appear in your office all transparent like. I don't really know what happens if he does this, as every time I saw him I quickly looked away out of habit from FNAF 2. Now we can get to Poop Dog, aka The Creation. The Creation will start in the basement of your house. As the memory progresses, The Creation will make his way through the house and to the attic where you are. Now, I know just by looking at him, you may be thinking, God damn, that robot is really hot. And I agree. However, this is not the character you're going to want to rule 30 for you. He'll bend you like a contortionist, but we both know full well that you can't bend like that, so you'd probably just end up dying. On your cameras, you'll see these 4 markers that represent doors or barriers. As the Creation moves, he will break his way through these barriers in an attempt to get to you. You can use your shock to send him back a phase in the cameras, but this brings up an issue. Your shock has a painfully slow recharge time, and if you flash the Creation, then you won't be able to flash Golden Freddy to win. Finding the perfect balance between flashing these two is key to defeating this memory. Once you've found and flashed the 12th and final Golden Freddy, the attic memory will be completed. As far as gameplay goes, that's where the Joy of Creation story mode comes to a close. There's multiple other things along with an enormous timeline to dissect, but I'd rather die. I like talking about how the game plays, and in that case, Joy of Creation story mode is top notch. Every single memory plays completely differently, and I think this is the main reason why it's so good. With other fan games and even the originals themselves, you quickly understand what you need to do and can then begin to come up with strategies that allow you to not use certain intended parts of the game. For example, FNAF 2. In FNAF 2, there are a lot of cameras. Like, a lot. However, you only ever need to use one. That's not very interesting when you think about it. You actually have no good reason to ever look at any of the other cameras in the game because the music box is all that matters. Same goes with FNAF 1. The only cameras you have to look at are the right corner cameras to make sure Freddy stays put, and occasionally you'll have to check on Foxy, but if you're playing correctly, you don't even have to look at Foxy in order to win. The Joy of Creation story mode switches up the gameplay loop every night. None of the nights are terribly complex, leaving out the attic, but since you have to learn something new each night, that's not something I have a problem with. I think if you were to take one of these memories from this game and turn it into a standalone game, I wouldn't like the game very much, because repeating formulas just isn't fun in any game. Don't keep repeating yourself, or if you do, make sure that it's repeated in a way that's interesting. For example, Undertale. While that whole game is based around an RPG battle mechanic, every enemy has unique and different attack patterns to learn, and just when you get bored of dodging projectiles, the game switches it up and changes the mechanics and physics of the heart you play as. It's brilliant, and so is this game. I think if more FNAF devs took inspiration for how this game plays out, overall, we would have a lot more fan games that stand out and are fresh and exciting. But let me know what you think in the comments below. The question of the video is, what is your favorite memory from the Joy of Creation story mode? With the question being asked, I've been Dxtr, and I'll see you all in the next video. See ya! So when you shart out by... Damn it! So when you Fuck! I personally subscribe to the belief that he's scratching his hook on his big fat stupid balls. Chica will try to fit her big oh, fuck. Chica will try to fit her big damn it. Once she begins to wriggle and writhe in your hole, pause. Because fire in Five Nights at Freddy's is like beans on toast to British people. I don't know if I'd call them people though. Gotta be... Creation, like the Joy of Creation. That's the name of the game. Isn't that so cool? That's so fucking cool. I'm gonna scrub my nuts on a fuck. God. Let's start with the poopy ass golden Freddy. I did not just laugh at poopy ass.